Hello, everyone. Welcome to News on the Flip Side. I hope everyone's having a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on this big, blue, beautiful planet. I mean, we're in every time zone there is. Actually, we're supposed to have Gary Heseltine with us tonight, but I don't see him. I see him online, and I've hit him up with the link a couple of times. Maybe he's sleeping. It is, what time is it over there? It's 5 a.m., I believe. Yeah, I believe it's 5 a.m. in the morning. So it's about 5:25 in the morning in England. So Gary, wake up, man. Smell the coffee. Wake up. If not, we'll get him back on it another time if he don't get on with us tonight. But he was bringing his new book out, Non-Human. And I guess it's part of the Rendlesham thing because I don't know what it was. I was going to let him tell me about it tonight. But I know he had a lot to do with Rendlesham, and he knows Larry Warren. And, I know the Rendlesham movie is supposed to be coming out in September.
Oh, cool.
So, y'all, yeah,
It's actually 225. It's too bright. 225 in England right now.
2:25. There y'all go, people. And Jay, yeah, yes. It's the wee hours of the morning. Well, when I used to do UF Undercover, I think it was midnight to 2 a.m. It aired. It was a great time zone too because there's lots of people up, lots of people listening. It's always fun to listen to weird, creepy stuff in the wee morning hours. It's just it's more fun.
It's the witching hour.
That's why Art Bell did so well, and Coast to Coast did so well. And what do you mean, Ryan? No, you mean do I listen to Coast every night? No, I don't. But it's because I work for a living. It's nothing against George. I like George. I mean, I've met George. I don't know 5 times. I've been on Coast to Coast 4 or 5 times, and I think I've met George in person at conferences 5 or 6 times. He's a very nice guy. The first time somebody introduced me to him in public was Karen Dolan. We were in Roswell, Nevada, for the 59th Roswell thing.
Roswell, New Mexico.
Oh, yeah, I did say Nevada, didn't I? All right, people in Roswell, didn't mean to hate on y'all. Sure, there might be a Roswell, Nevada now. We don't know. But I did mean Roswell.
But it's not the Roswell we're talking about.
I just heard they just had a conference, and I hear they got another one coming up sometime. And I know they usually do the big one in July, the weekend, 4th of July weekend. I haven't been though. Man, the last time I've been it's been 10 years at least. And I just don't get down there that much. I mean, once you go to Roswell 3 or 4 times, I like you people, but there's no reason to go down there. Everybody who goes down there and speak, I can talk to here. So there's no reason to go down there. No, Roswell's great. I mean, go down and visit. It's a weird town. Everything's got alien heads on it. They got aliens crashed into the damn Walmarts and stuff. It's just a weird place. Yeah, it's the street lights have got alien faces on them. Just go hang out. Yes, I got a friend got a coffee shop down there in the corner. You need to go down there and tell them to sell you some coffee. He said, "Give me some coffee." Joe said, "Give me some coffee." Yeah, tell him Joe said, "Give me some coffee." I already know what they're going to say, but tell him, yeah, Joe said, "Give me some coffee." Yes, charity. Yes,
I hear they cook their eggs over easy, like looking like alien eyeballs.
They might. They're weird down there. And, they had a little restaurant on the corner of Roswell for a long time that where all the alien people like to meet. It was on Main Street. So I don't know. It didn't make it. Last time I was down there, it wasn't there anymore. But I had met quite a few people there. They'd go have lunch. Go in there. Everybody from conference, everybody would be in there. You go in and talk and chat. It was just like a little dive diner, but I guess other things like McDonald's took over.
Yeah, it's like any other town. They have their staples. I'm sure there's at least a McDonald's on every other corner, a Wendy's or two. But they have their quirky, tourism and alien stuff. So I think that's really what kept that town alive. Before Roswell, it was nothing. It was the most secret airbase because of the 509th, and I don't think anybody except locals even knew about it until the stories broke in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, no, it's Roswell was a weird thing because of the way it started and went and came and went and came. And I knew a lot of people involved. I mean, there's nothing really left to talk about Roswell. People always want to talk about it, but everybody's dead now. And people like to make up shit now or add stuff or try to say they got new information.
Yeah.
But really and truly, Roswell is what it is. It's a good thing to talk about and it's fun. But it's a dead case. You're not going to get anything pertinent out of it that's going to change ufology. Unless the government comes out and says, "Oh, guess what? It was really a UFO. We did capture aliens." Ha 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 ha. Other than that, it's a dead case. What
Yeah.
can you do though? What was that, Barry? Actually, I'm talking to Gary right now. I'm getting ready to text him back. I think he says he could come on at 3 a.m. his time, which would be about a half hour. So, what was that? Aliens live. Well, I don't know. Joe Biden might be a freaking alien, as far as I know. It would
Could be.
explain a lot. Wait. I retract that statement because I don't want to hate on aliens. I mean, really and truly, aliens. I didn't mean to insult you like that. I apologize. I just.
Yeah, you don't want to get an alien
Yeah.
anger probe.
Yes, no anger probes. Well, no, we're going to do a little news since Gary's not going to be on until 3. And hold on, let me text him right there. Wait. Okay, there we go. Chip carrier. Sorry about that, guys. What do you mean Mars? Oh, you know, mean Elon Musk? I love Elon Musk. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about this today about Elon Musk. So is he superhero or is he super villain? This is the question. This is
either way.
I mean, right now he is the champion of free speech in this country. Matter of fact, not just this country, every country he is. He's a champion of free speech. And he's helping the Ukraine in a way no one else can by giving them those satellites. And he also put Russia in its place by saying, sure, launch your continental ballistic missiles and I'll just launch one of my satellites at it and knock it out into space. He said, and I guarantee you I can put up satellites faster than you can put up missiles, build missiles. And he means he's already got 7,000 up there. Now that's Russia currently has 1,500 ballistic missiles. He's got plenty enough to knock them down.
Yeah, he's got them 3 times over.
And as far as the Russian submarines, I'm not worried about that. Our Wolfpack knows just right where the hell they are. They just looking to have lunch. That's all they're doing. I have no doubt about that. It's funny. So Katie Couric's out on, or is it one of them? She's out on the USS Nimitz the other day. This recent news, and she's talking about the different navies and China navies. And they're filming her standing on a deck, and they're having a conversation with the admiral. We're talking about the differences and how one's structured, how one's not. And out of the blue, you see a little periscope come up out of the water, and then you see a little deck. Boom! There she is. One of the California class just cruising along. Hello, just letting you know we're here. And then she dropped back down just enough so you could just see the top of her. I have never, I've been on 2 carriers, well, 3 carriers technically, and I've never seen a carrier without a submarine escort ever. And depending on what the carrier is and what it's carrying, they may be more than one.
It's usually at least 1, but sometimes 2.
Yeah. No, Jack, if you're talking about if they're deployed, that's different. In a deployment, there could be up to 7 submarines with them, scattered around in different places. If it's serious deployment where we got like one of the whole fleets out, then you could be up to 12. But usually it's like he said 1 to 2. And sometimes if you have 4 carriers in a group, then there's going to be at least 7 or 8 of them floating around. There's going to be 1 for each carrier, and then there's going to be some. And their orders are whatever means it is to destroy something, including if they have to get in front of it. Yes. Oh, yes.
They're like the Secret Service for the carrier.
They're there to make sure that carrier survives. It can't do anything about air stuff, but everything else, it's there to make sure that carrier survives.
Anything below the waves, they are to take care of. And the other cool thing is that people don't realize is that they can hide under almost any boat in that flotilla.
Oh, yeah. They can just
ride. It could be under the carrier. It could be under the destroyer. It could be under the frigate. It could be out, in the perimeter away from all the ships doing a circle like a shark. And you'll never know where it is until it hits you.
Well, they sailed one up into China, in the South Sea in China a couple of weeks ago. China had this big flotilla out there. We've done this twice now in the last 6 months. 6 months ago, they did it. We sailed in a destroyer. A frigate. Into the Chinese fleet, pulled up alongside their carrier and was just cruising along when the captain of the Chinese carrier realized it was showing American colors. In other words, they were dead. They were dead. That's what that meant. They were dead. They were sunk. There was no way. They had no idea where they were. They didn't pick them up on radar. So They were just next to them, and it really proved something to the Chinese. Like, wait a minute. And they were talking about the Chinese the other day, but they also proved when Trump was in office and when Reagan was in office, both presidents. I think Obama did it too, where they just all of a sudden, in the middle of whatever was going on, with Reagan, 4 of them surfaced. There was 4 four nucleus submarines with long-load nuclear payloads on board, multi-warhead payloads on board that just surfaced in 4 different places around China. Plenty enough. They described it as more than enough to just flatten the entire country. There would be nothing, no major cities, most small towns would be gone, and all the military would just be dust.
Yeah, all the infrastructure would be done.
Yeah, so it would just be over with. And they didn't even know they were there. They were sitting off the coast. There was no way they could have got to them in time to stop the launches. They're not going into space, so you're not going to shoot them down. They're going to be cruising under. And then people don't realize it. Everybody's like, well, we got those cruise missile things. Those are worthless. I said, well, first off, they're not worthless. But secondly, in case y'all didn't know, you can put nuclear tips on those cruise missiles. Oh, yes. And we got lots of them. People don't realize the way it works. So currently, Russia and the United States has about 1,500 missiles together combined. That's on board their submarines and in the ground and wherever we might have them scattered around. But each country has about another 6,000 warheads sitting on shelves. At one time, we had more than 15,000 each. So the treaty did help. I mean, we did get rid of a lot of them, but but we still have at least 6,000 each later on, 5,500, whatever you want to say. Plenty enough to flatten the planet over several times. And some of these are big bombs. They're not all little 1 kiloton, 2 kiloton.
But those aren't the ones that are so scary. We also have that people don't realize it's a dual system, a Tomahawk TLAM. It's a torpedo land attack missile or torpedo launched attack missile, excuse me. And it can be launched vertically from the vertical tubes and shot almost like a ballistic or supersonic. And then it can also be shot through the horizontal torpedo tubes. They can be nuclear tipped. And what they do when they leave the torpedo tube is it's kind of like its own submarine. It floats up to the surface and then launches, and it stays like just above the tree line. They have such good radar that it will contour the tree line, and you cannot find that with any kind of radar unless you're specifically looking for that. And that'd be on you in seconds. You could launch from the western or the furthest coast away from China and hit the other side of China before they even knew the missile was launched.
Carlos, China does say it has carrier busters. First, we got to see that, and secondly, okay, so we're launching a ballistic missile at a carrier, so it's cruising. A Phalanx can still take it out up to 3 miles. It doesn't matter how fast it's going. Once it's picked up on radar can shoot it down. That's one of the things they were talking about, those hypersonic missiles. Well, those are cool, and they're deadly close up. I mean, because boom, boom, they're there. But once they get out a distance where you have time to see them coming on radar and you can shoot missiles at them or just line them into the line of your Phalanx machines, they still can be shot down.
Yeah. You can get any kind of chaff or debris field in front of it. They're done.
So that's the thing. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from hypersonic missiles because they're badass, especially at close range. They are bad. They're fast. We're talking Mach 5, Mach 6. Yeah. They're cruising. But something the Russians and the Chinese, I guess, didn't understand. So, President Trump, everybody said was crazy as a hatter, but he made that Space Force. So Space Force, I didn't find this out till recently, has its own space planes. I'm like, what? I'm like, well, I'm still like, what the? So they took DARPA.
Are they using Aurora space planes?
Oh, they got a couple of different ones, and they confiscated DARPA's.
Oh, DARPA was developing the Aurora space plane.
Yeah, so they told DARPA, "Oh no, you're now part of Space Force, my friend. We just annexed your ass." So no, I was reading.
I believe the correct technical term is misappropriated.
Yes. So from what I understand, some of them are like an Aurora class, so they have these pulse engines. They get them going really fast, and as they get through the atmosphere, they can use their ram scoops to refuel at high speeds without having to carry all that extra fuel, which gives them more speed. And they also can go into space and come back into the atmosphere. They have navigation jets from space. I don't think they have really space engines. I think they just got navigation jets so they get back down.
But the speeds they're flying, we're talking once they leave the atmosphere, they have momentum to last.
Yeah,
they can go around the planet forever until they decide.
We're talking Mach 7, anywhere from Mach 7 to Mach 15. Yeah. They're cruising. Anyway, they can be in Moscow in less than 35 minutes carrying a nuclear payload. But they wouldn't even know what hit them. I mean, these things, some of them can be big. They can carry a lot. Some of them can be automated because we've been flying that one space plane. It's a robot plane. It's been doing all that thing stays up there. I didn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
One of them,
It
it's
flies
three.
in a circle around the planet, around the country.
Well, one of them, its combined time up there now is 7 years. It was
Wow.
up for 2, and it came down, and then went up for 1, and then it came back and went up for 3. Each one's like 3.5 and stuff. And I was like, what? And they're very reusable. I mean, these things are badass, whatever it is. I'm sure Elon's trying to get his fingers on them. Nobody knows exactly what the propulsion is. I got a lot of friends in the field, and I've been even pulling in favors lately. And thank God I got a clearance that I don't have to worry about getting anybody in trouble. But still, they're like, Joe.
Well, you said pulse engine. It sounds like maybe ion pulse engine, but I thought they also only worked in the vacuum of space, not in the atmosphere. So maybe it has multiple engines. It's got
to be honest with you, I'd have to say fusion pulse engines.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know if that would work in the atmosphere or it only works.
No, so
it may have a gas engine for atmospheric, and then the pulse engines for outer space.
So, well, from the way they described it to me is, so when you take the plane up, you're going on these engines. These engines are running on a fusion. They're powered by fusion. They're just like jet engines in a way, but they're powered by fusion. So the engines you get up, you only run in one row. By the way, there's 4 rows. You only run in one row when you're taking off and going places because you don't need any more power than that. But like the one they see in Stevensville, all 16 rows were lit up. So they describe it coming in. All the engines were white. And they're little square blocks, and they all described as white. Red. They were described as an orangish red, and it was cruising, and they had 2 chase planes following it. And that's when I found that it wasn't an alien because they talked about rivets and chase planes and shit. No, that's ours. But anyway, long story short, he said they're sitting there, and you heard this, and then you seen them, all the engines turn white, and then the bitch was gone. The chase planes didn't. They were just like, you could just see, they just didn't know what the hell just happened.
Looking like they were parked.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, we know that night that there was a squadron of F-16s in the air, a full squadron. And this thing flew right over George Bush's house. And nobody sent a plane to go see what it was. So there's no doubt it was ours. It just cruised out. It was badass. They call it pulse drive. But I'm sure what it really is just some type of fusion drive that just pulses the engines. I don't even think it's anything that sophisticated. I just think it's pretty much kind of like a solid rocket. Heat it up, open the gates, and let it go. Close the gates, and it's back. And it works just the same way in space. Because, this guy the other day was trying to tell me why it was impossible to be in space because there was nothing to push against. There's no way ships could go anyway. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the fuel comes out. It's got to push against air or something. It's a vacuum. I said, so it's not going anywhere. I said, dude, you're thinking about an atmosphere. No, that's not. I said, you really can't figure this out, can you? He's like, no. I said, it's pushing against the ship. He's like, what do you mean? I said, because there's no atmosphere, it's pushing against the ship. Where it's coming out of the ship, it's pushing against it and pushing the ship along. I said, well, if it was an atmosphere, the thrust would actually be pushing against the atmosphere and moving it along. I said, it's a little bit different. I said, but it still works the same way. And they're like, no. I said, well, how do you think all these satellites move around in space, dude? I said, have you ever looked at a J-track? I mean, there's shitloads of satellites up there.
The bulk of our technology, even vehicles, cars that we use, the basic tenet of it is we put fuel in it, we throw something out the back, and it pushes us that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and one pushes against one thing, one pushes against another thing. Well, that's what they were talking about with fusion drives. So in space, you take the fusion drive and you put a gate on it and you charge it up to just about where it's going to blow up, and then you open the gate and you just let the force out. Well, the force flowing out of the reactor is pushing the ship in that direction. It's not pushing against the space. It's because of the flow coming out of the reactor. It's pushing against the ship moving that way. Something like that, they're thinking continuous could break light speed, but they're really thinking this would be more along half the light speed, 2/3 light speed. You got to remember, it gets complicated. The faster we go, the slower time gets. Mm-hmm. So even at a half light speed, they're losing years. So
you don't even have to travel the speed of light.
No, that's what I'm saying.
if you and I take two watches and have them start at the exact same time, and you go up into space with one, and I stay here, when you come down, your watch will be slower than mine.
Yeah. So yeah, it's weird.
Distance as well. Distance has an effect on it as well. So distance and gravity have an effect on time, not just speed.
Well, hey Roseanne, how you doing, sweetie? It's well, thank you. We are beautiful people. You're beautiful people. We're beautiful people. Not everybody's beautiful people, and it's a beautiful people club now. But just teasing.
You have to have the right polish.
That's right. It's right. You got to keep that shine on there. We're to a point right now that we shouldn't be in this, because I kind of get aggravated with China, because America was China's champion for a long time. President Nixon's the one that got trades opened up with and got them the way they could start selling to the world again, got people to start trusting them. And now, a lot of people in the world that regret, trusting them. And remember this is what y'all all forget. Yes, China's got a navy bigger than ours now. And they even can say they got Russia's navy with them, which is, well, we're not going to talk about Russia's navy. They should have a good navy, but I'm not trusting it's that good of a navy.
The only problem with Russia's navy is we know where every piece is, and if we need to, we can drop a nuke on it.
Plus, their maintenance isn't up to par. Is what the real problem is.
That's true.
So we've seen what happened to their flagship, the freaking Ukrainians. So look at it like this. So this is the Ukraine war. All right, America goes to Iraq. Iraq's got a 1 million man army, all kind of Russian artillery, Russian tanks, Russian jets, everything. They're ready for us. 6 months later, they're surrendering because we just dominated. We went in and took everything over in the air first, and then we put our troops on the ground and we put our tanks, and we said, this is going to happen. We're going to, you're going to die or surrender, one or the other. But the Ukraine is not even half that size. Yeah. They even have no 1 million man army. I mean, Jesus. And they're kicking Russia's ass. And, I like Putin. Yeah, I know people don't like when I say that, but I like Xi Jinping. I don't have anything personally against these guys. Both these guys are after the same thing, domination for their country. Putin, unfortunately, and same thing with China. Communism doesn't work. And even if China was able to take the whole world over, somewhere along the line, like every other country,
they won't be able to hold the whole thing.
It'll crash. Yes, it'll crash. It'll just go down and get ready there. Oh, I see Gary coming. We're gonna drop him in a second. We got what, Gene? No, we're not taking no breaks. I'll drop Gary in just a second. Why would I want to move to China? I like the United States. I might go visit Gary in England. I like going to England. England's a cool country. Well, somebody asked me the other day, good friend of mine from overseas asked me, he goes, where are you going to go visit first country that you go to? I said, well, I've already visited countries. I just haven't visited any in Europe. I said, but if I went to Europe first, England would actually be the first country I went to. Well, I got Scottish, Irish, Welsh descent, so I'd have to go over there anyway. And 44%, and then I go down to Italy and hang out and see some of my lesser cousins.
It's good food.
Some of my bad cousins, and hang out there for a while. And then I go over to Greece for a little while and pop back over. I might stop off in France. I got a lot of friends who really like France. France just doesn't have the appeal to me it does to other people. And not French people. I'm not hating on y'all. I think you got a great country, except for right now with the riots. But to be honest with you, I'd want to go to Australia before I went to France. I mean, I go to France because it would probably be one of the countries I was passing through going to visit one of the other ones. But still, in England, like right there next to me, you can take the subway, the train to them or something.
You can go under, you can go under the channel with the sub.
That's okay. Let's try and Gary in with us. Oh, man. Gary, how you been, man?
I'm good, thank you.
You're looking good, man. You're looking good.
Not bad for an old man.
Yeah, especially for 3 o'clock in the morning. That's that. You looking good. I'd be like, man, what the hell's going on? Where am I at? What I got to do? No, I never go to sleep. I can't help myself. I'm like a night owl.
Yeah, I'm a night owl all my life.
Yeah, that's how I've been. I used to prefer when I could work nights. Unfortunately, some of my business has to be done in daytime, so I got to work in days. But man, I'd work every night I could, because we'd go out and get lost and find ourselves in places we shouldn't be. Alien places, military places, things. And my wife was crazy. She still is, actually. She will walk on a fucking military base, middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning. Keesler Air Force. I mean, not Keesler. Eglin Air Force Base. Alien shit all over the place. Things going on, crazy stuff happening in the town. She's like, look, that looks like a UFO. walks around. She hates water, by the way. Walks into the Gulf of Mexico, walks around their fences, walks back up on the beach, and starts walking into the base. I'm like, we're going to freaking prison. I said, we're going to prison, man. It's just all there is to it. They just confiscated all of our equipment, but they let us go. They said, you might get this back, but y'all get off our base now. That's actually after we'd been there for like 2.5 hours. It was bad. So, man, how you been? I mean, you got a new book out. I mean, so what we talk? I didn't get a chance to see it. So, what are we talking about? You know, I'm gonna bring you back after I read it. It's looks good. Non-human. He's talking about you, Joe.
500 pages. 500
Damn.
pages.
You've been busy, writer. You know, it's funny. I'll be in L.A. at the end of April for the Writers of the Future Awards, and all them big movie guys will be there. I'll have to tell them you got a new book out, man. You know,
Well,
they got.
read it as soon as you can, and then.
Oh, I will. I will. Wait, don't you have it on audio somewhere?
No.
Oh, you're killing me, Gary. You're killing me, man.
No, it's called old-fashioned reading, Joe.
You're killing me, man. You're killing me.
And I deliberately brought it out because it's my first book.
Looks good.
In written form, paperback form, because like a lot of people, I wanted to hold something that says
that's my wife too.
And an ebook may well come out in the future, but if you're an author, I think you need to do this. You need to hold it in your hand and say yes.
Well, send me some stuff where I can get them. We'll put it up in the show if you text me in the show. And
if you send me your home address, I will send you a signed copy of the
book. I'll before we get out of here tonight, I'll make sure I get it to you. But what I'm going to do is I'll come get 3 or 4 from you because I like giving books away. And I gave away, you don't want to know how many I gave for Christmas this year. I gave away 2,000 books this year. And I get people who donate them, like Writers of the Future donated 200 anthologies for, 36, 37, 38, and each one has 12 stories. So it was great. We gave away 20 lightsabers, dude. You should have been around because you would have been eligible because you're not a member of the station. You're just a guest. I mean, we were giving them away. These lightsabers, $900. I'm like, what? I was stunned. People loved them, but we would give away a lightsaber. Whatever lightsaber, we'd give away 2 books, 2 different books, and then we would just give it away. But
I want you to read it.
Oh, I'm gonna read it first because I'll make sure.
And if you like it, then you push it. Because don't forget, in the States, there's a lot of opposition to my book.
Yeah, well, I know that. I shouldn't even say this. So I had a text message when they found out you were coming on the show. Actually, it was before. The same day you text me, someone else texted me. We're not going to mention our names, and said, "Do you know Gary's got a new book out?" And I was like, "Well, I just found." I didn't say that. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, really? I didn't know that." And they're like, "Well, I can't believe he wouldn't wait till September." I'm like, "It's a book. Why does he got to wait till September?" I still was lost in this whole conversation, by the way. And I was like, "Well, I said, well, he's coming on with me in a couple of weeks." I said, "I don't know what to tell you." I said, "I've been knowing Gary for a while. I like him." I said, in between, I said, I like his research. He works hard. I said, so far, he hasn't really done anything I really disagreed with. I said, I wouldn't matter if he did anyway. I don't always agree with anybody anyway. But I know you do good research because I followed you on other stuff. And I know you've dealt with our virtual friend or our different crazy person that we know. I'm not going to mention his name, Larry. But than that, matter of fact, I ain't talked to him in like 2 years. I shouldn't even say nothing. It's
no doubt we'll talk about the book in depth, and there's lots of new information as well as a lot of important old information that I think the American public have been shown about the Rendlesham case, and it should be in the public domain. And that's why I'm in opposition, because I'm going to show the truth. And that's why I deliberately did not do any pre-publicity at all.
No, I know. And
that was done deliberately because once it's out, it's out.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I put the genie back in the bottle, and that's what I was conscious of.
Because I was talking with a couple of hosts yesterday, and I said, he's coming on. Y'all should listen to the archive tonight and invite him on, because I said, just research Gary a little bit. You'll find that he's a pretty straightforward kind of guy. And
absolutely. Well, why would I lie?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Though you're a pretty straightforward kind of guy. I mean, I've known you, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now, and you've never done anything that I would consider to be. It might be longer than that. Nothing. You've never done anything to be, I would consider, to be shady or off. Don't get me wrong. I've known people around us that do shit, but you, for some reason, managed to stay out of it. And guys, I would get into detail, but it would take too much away from what we're going to talk about tonight.
What would be the point?
Yeah.
And you know, all the kind of firestorm that we had 2 or 3 years back.
That was interesting.
Is all fruitless, because when I interviewed Sergeant Adrian Bustinza for 4.5 hours in really what was his first proper interview since 1984, his revelations, not only about Larry Warren being there, reconfirming that, we can talk about that in detail, but he also gave me a new event that was
that's a
new
nice
sighting that was totally unknown, totally different to the whole side of things. And you know, I talked to a guy called Steve Longero, who was on the same training course as Larry Warren, and he said, I saw him in the forest because I was stood at the staging area keeping my head down. It was my first tour.
I bet he was keeping his head down.
Yeah. And he said I didn't really know what was going on. And he says, I was pleased to see Larry. We weren't friends as such. We were on the same course, but you know, you might have 46 people on that course. When I joined the RAF, I was in an intake of 47 people on my flight. So you get to know all the names over the course of your basic training and your trade training, but you wouldn't regard all of them as friends. You just knew them because you were doing everything together. You generally just hook up with 5 or 6 people who were around you in the area of the block where you slept. That's generally what happened. You got tight with those people. And he certainly wasn't tight with Larry Warren forward, because he was so sick of all the crap that he was getting.
No, I bet he was.
And he turned out to be an absolutely stand-up guy, because this guy, Steve Longero, as well as Adrian Bustinza, might add, both had almost a 30-year policing career, whether it be sheriff's department, etc., law enforcement. So these are absolutely stand-up, and I have absolutely no doubt that they're telling the truth. Why would they lie?
Wait, Christopher, what we're talking about? Okay, we kind of jumped in this because Carrie and I know each other. It's we're talking about what happened in Rendlesham Forest when there was at the Air Force Base in Rendlesham Forest, when there was an encounter of some sort. Now,
encounters.
Yeah, he's right. Encounters.
Yeah,
it was over several nights, and it was several encounters. And the funny part about all this is, and Gary and I have talked about this before, along with Larry, but somewhere about 12 years ago, or 15 years ago, I met Peter Robbins, and I got swept up in all of this. And and when he wrote Left at Eastgate, and I was thinking, you know, this is when I learned that Larry was who Larry was. So about 3 years into researching with them, I talked Peter Robbins into sending me all of the original High 8 tapes, the audio tapes, all of them. He sent me 2 packs, 12 each. And I sat there for 3 weeks going through them, doing voice stress on them. What I found funny about this is there are times when the 2 of these idiots are walking, I mean idiots, walking through the woods, you'll hear them. There was shit. They would jump. There was stuff just scared. Some of this was like raw comedy, people. Y'all should have heard this. But the point being is, at the time, everything that came out of there was no malice. There didn't seem to be any funny business on the play. It seemed to be 2 guys walking through the woods talking about something that happened. It didn't come off any different than that or any other thing. So I took it much more serious when the voice stress all came back on the plus side. Then I was asked to talk to Mr. Holt and Peniston. What's the other 2?
Burroughs.
Yeah. And
John Burroughs.
Yeah, John Burroughs. And anyway, so I said, well, look, I said, this is what I did for them. Would you allow me to do it for you? You would have thought I asked if I could have killed their firstborn. I'm not kidding you. I got hate mail. I got people. I was listening to a radio show where they're hating on me. I constantly, wait, what am I getting hated on for? I said, all I asked was, would you submit to voice stress? And the host, well, you just assuming they're lying. I said, no, the other witnesses submitted to voice stress. And I said, I'm just asking them to do what the other witnesses did. And the guy's like, really? I'm like, yeah, really. I said, I'm not looking for anything else. Holt told me a couple of times in a not so pleasant way. And the guy's not that bad of a guy. And a lot of what he told me, I did believe, but he was scared to be voice stressed. He was scared of some of the questions I were going to ask because I was being nice, Gary. I was giving him a list of questions I had. So if you could even rehearse them if you wanted to. He was just scared of some of the answers coming out. Not so much, I think, because he was lying. I think he was just scared of what the answers were going to be. I could be wrong. You know it better than I do. So,
Well, when you come to read the book, there's 3 chapters on Holt.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
There's a chapter on Nick Pope. There's a chapter on.
Oh, I can't wait for that one either.
There's a chapter on John Burroughs, as well as a chapter on Adrian Bustinza, a chapter on Steve Longero.
I can tell I'm already going to have a blast reading this book.
But,
guys,
but the thing that comes out with Holt, bear in mind, I had a 7-year collaboration period with him between 2007 and 2014, is the fact that he knows a lot more than he's admitting to.
Yes, he does. I agree.
And so that's, I think, why he's nervous.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
He's a witness, but he knows a lot more. And I think there are several agendas at play, and we've kind of hinted at that before. But I think through the 5 years of my research for the book, 3 years in the writing, that pretty much is my conclusion, that there's been several agendas at play.
I agree.
Both individual and I think national, in terms of the media playing it down, in terms of the US government, the British government playing it down, because it was such a good case.
It is.
So many moving parts. I mean, at the conclusion of the book, we're not talking 3 incidents over 3 successive nights. We're talking 17 incidents over probably now 4 nights of consecutive activity. 17 different timed events, all involving various different types of UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's and that's the thing. I just, that's really, when I was talking to him that night or a couple of nights after that, I just got the feeling I got that look. If because like I said, I gave him a list of questions. Some of the questions were, look, I think this is deeper. Would you like to find out if it's even deeper? I said, if you're having blocks, I said, I have a degree in advanced hypnosis. I said, I can help you get through those. I said, I obviously feel like you're either holding back intentionally or holding back in fear of reprisal or something. And when I said that, you could see it. He didn't say anything, but you could see his face just kind of change, and he looked away from me, which of course means the next thing coming out of his mouth was going to be a lie. And obviously I struck a nerve.
Classic avoidance, breaking eye contact.
That's what it was. And I was just like, and he knew, because, most people know me I've got voice stress, but I've also got facial recognition. And somebody asked me about this the other day. He said, why don't you get all the stuff about voice stress and body language and facial recognition? I said, the voice stress was for something else. The other 3, I used to find people who stole for companies and people who lied to companies. It was my job. And I said, it had nothing to do with alien stuff. It just happened to be something that panned out later on in life,
You were taught in body language. I was taught in body language as an advanced interviewer. And there are many things you can pick up.
Yes,
Not only can you develop that instinct, you can hone in on it if you're a natural.
Well,
I think even with these gentlemen that we're talking about, particularly Lieutenant Colonel Hall, in almost all of his interviews, when he's talking about the incident, he starts to almost always break up about it. And yeah, he probably is holding some stuff back, but this guy's a career Army guy. You don't talk about this stuff.
Air Force guy.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not looking to be famous. He doesn't want to make money off it. He's not writing a book or a story or a movie. He's just relating the facts and the stresses in their voices, and all of the men, Pension, all those guys. I have not met any of them personally or interviewed any of them personally, but in any of their interviews, they're genuine people, and you can see the scare in their eyes.
Oh yeah, they are genuine witnesses, but it's a question of do they know more? And when other witnesses name them in incidents that they don't put themselves in, then that raises some questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the Steve Longero puts Holt in another incident, Jim Penniston in another incident, Sergeant Adrian Bustinza does the same, puts Jim Penniston in another incident. So, and Holt. So when you look at it like that, it's like, well, yeah, okay, you've admitted to what's in the memorandum, And over the course of my research, I realized that something that Colonel, or he finished a 2-star general, General Gordon Williams, said, sadly not with us, but he was once interviewed very briefly by James Fox for one of his documentaries. I think it was about 2008. I think it's I Know What I Saw, a very good documentary, and he kind of grabbed him while he was at the golf course, just as he was about to leave, and he was stood leaning on the car. And he basically asked about the memorandum, and he basically said there were some things in there that we didn't, we weren't happy to get out. And what he meant was the memorandum was never supposed to be released. And when it did, he says it went on to live a life on its own. Well, and he said there were some things we weren't prepared to talk about. But when that came out, the whole memorandum in early April or so, 1983, it was never meant for public release. So when it did get out, and it went public with the big News of the World headline, the tabloid newspaper in the UK, UFO lands in Suffolk, it's official. That was the big headline on the Sunday morning. That's when it really hit the world press, and they showed part of the memo. But what I came to realize through Williams' comments, it kind of came back to me several times. And I watched the clip, and over the years, and I realized what it actually meant was, and what he meant. What I think he meant was, once the memo came out, it was on US Air Force headed notepaper as a single-page memo, but it was still nevertheless from a deputy base commander of what was a nuclear strike base, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge. And so when Colonel Holt put his name to it, or Lieutenant Colonel Holt at the time, he was admitted in that one-page memorandum that there'd been a landed craft approximately 3 meters by 3 meters 2 nights earlier to his own multiple sightings of multiple UFOs 2 nights later. So that admitted to 2 events, and it was on US Air Force headed paper. Therefore, it was a legitimate Air Force document. Therefore, it meant that once that came out, the Air Force could not deny that there'd been 2 incidents. Now, prior to that memorandum coming out, they had denied any kind of paperwork, any kind of incident, full stop. And the memorandum was not supposed to come out. Larry Warren played a part in getting that out. It came out. But what it meant was they were only going to ever talk about 2 incidents. The first night with Jim Penniston and John Burroughs, and Holt when Holt was out with his team. Anything else they condemned. And if you look at what's happened over the years, any other story that's emerged, any other witness testimony is largely, and that isn't right, because everybody, whether you're in a small degree or a large degree, deserve to have a voice. They're all part of this unique event, and they're not given a voice. And part of the reason why I wrote the book is for the other people, lots of other people who've got a story to tell, and yet they're never really ever for an interview on TV or anything like that. None of them have appeared in documentaries, and that's wrong. This is a much wider case than Colonel Holt, Jim Penniston, John Burroughs, and Larry Warren. It's a much bigger case than that.
And Larry Warren had to crawl his way into this.
Well, he not initially, because don't forget, Larry Warren was the first person to go public with his name on documents.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And so he was the original military whistleblower. He was the one to first put his name up and say, "My name's Larry Warren, and I saw this." And so that's why he's the first original military whistleblower. It wouldn't have been him originally, because there was a guy called J.D. Ingalls, but he never went public with his name. He was the person who told Brenda Butler, one of the 2 housewives, early civilian researchers, within days of the incident. He was a US Air Force guy, military guy at the time on the base, and he because he'd known her for 5 years, and he knew that she'd had an interest. But he went by a pseudonym, and he never went public. So hence, he's not a whistleblower if you don't use your own name. Larry Warren did do by late 1982, which is nearly 2 years after the event. And so he became the original military whistleblower. But the key thing with all of that is that the real story was not told. And Larry Warren was only telling his part from his perception.
Yeah.
Because nobody else was allowed to speak. Holt was still in the Air Force. Jim Penniston was still in the Air Force. And John Burroughs was still in the Air Force. So really, it wasn't until they retired in the early 90s that they then collectively came out. And the first thing that they pretty much all did was say, well, we don't recall Larry's event, and it don't match any of our recollections. And it was almost as if their mission, once retired, was to attack the guy who'd been running the show, in a sense, in the public for 8 years on his own.
Yeah, because they now wanted the limelight. They wanted to take out one witness that was doing good.
Why did they want the limelight?
Well, look at Barrows and Penniston with that time travel crap. I don't. Some of the stuff
I do a chapter on and talk about that.
Yeah, because some of the stuff they said, I'm not getting deep, but some of the stuff them two have said over the years, I'm thinking they should be in a wacky house somewhere. I mean, really and truly, I couldn't take them as a credible witness if you paid me money. I'd be like, no. And I had the chance to interview him. I was in Fallon, Nevada. No, not Fallon, Laughlin, Nevada. And oh shit, no, I wasn't even there. What the hell I was? Anyway, wherever the Flamingo is outside of Las Vegas, we were there. And I was at the conference, and they were there, and we got to talking. And I said, aren't y'all the guys from Rendlesham? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, I've talked to Larry Warren a few times, and I've heard that, y'all have different views and blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. And they got to talking, and they went from the Rendlesham thing right into this, oh, well, we're moving around and we're time traveling, and we come to witness these events. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, really? I said, because first off, I didn't really care. I just wanted to know about their thing at Rendlesham. That's all I was asking them about. Never could get them to actually tell me what they saw at Rendlesham. They kept skipping around it and walking around it. And then Jerry Pittman was still alive. He was there. He walked up and asked him the same question. And they just both looked at him like, well, we just answered. I said, no, you didn't. I said, you haven't told me what you saw there. I said, I've seen stuff that y'all's written, and I've seen stuff in the video. I said, I'm just asking you personally, what was the experience? What kind of feelings was it? What kind of emotions were they? What were you thinking about? It was almost like it wasn't in their head anymore. Or they were forcing themselves to remember I don't even know how to explain it, Gary. It was very strange and very weird. And I got the very distinct feeling that these guys were, how can I say this politely, partially lobotomized. They just, I don't know. They had a bunch of shit coming out their mouths that really and truly, if I heard, I was just looking at them like, okay. And then they were talking about shifting around in England, how they could shift into the royal family. And I was like, that was it for me. I had to go. I said, okay, well, it's been a pleasant chat with y'all, but I got to go. I didn't even use the tape. I rolled it up and stuck it. I still got it somewhere, but I didn't use it. I was like, all right, guys.
Listen to that.
Yeah. Oh, I'll dig it up for you. I got it somewhere. It's on Mini 8, but I got it somewhere. I'm a packer. It drives my wife crazy. I keep everything. It's matter of fact, just the other day I found the sighting I had forgot all about. Something we had filmed way down at the bottom of Florida. I had forgot all about it. And I'm going through my videos like, wow, what the hell is this? It's what happens. You get busy, people. It is what happens. But I mean, no, Janine, we're talking. Well, you get old and you get busy. How's that? We're talking about Rendlesham Forest and what went on. So, well, it was an Air Force base. Technically, it was kind of a joint base.
It was RAF Woodbridge, and what was the other one?
RAF Bentwaters.
Bentwaters,
yeah. It was leased from the RAF.
Right.
Yeah, they were in
bases during the Second World War, and then they were leased to the U.S. Air Force.
Donnie, as far as there being nukes, I heard all kind of stories about that, but I couldn't prove it even if I wanted to.
Oh, I could.
Gary could see. I couldn't. Well, no, because you got to have into it. I don't live over there, man. You got to have connections to find out stuff like that.
But you can even find it on the internet. There's a document that says that there were nuclear weapons. It's a published paper. It's in the book early on, and it confirms that there were nuclear weapons at Bentwaters. Bentwaters is the real one that was still active. Both Bentwaters and Woodbridge had weapons storage areas. But we're really talking about the events and what was inside RAF Bentwaters in their weapons storage area. What Holt told me twice was there was more nuclear weapons at RAF Bentwaters underground than anywhere else in Europe. And so whilst it was allowed to be and recognised as a nuclear base, it was really the amount of ordnance that would have broken the armament agreements.
Yeah.
And that's the big secret, I think, that holds all of this together. Because why do UFOs turn up? And my conclusion is they came at a time of world crisis, i.e., Polish shipyard workers threatening to break away from the Soviet Union. It was still a Soviet state under Lech Wałęsa. And at the time of the late December 1980, hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops were massing on the borders of Poland, and it looked like they were going to go and steamroller in, like they'd put down Czechoslovakia and put down Hungary in the past. So it looked like that was going to happen. And you also had 52 American hostages in Iran, hostage crisis. So you had a powder keg in the Middle East. So it was a very difficult time of world crisis. And I think, I can't prove it, but I think that the UFOs turned up at RAF Bentwaters to scan the weapons storage area, the hot roll bunkers, because of the amount of ordnance that shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, it shouldn't have been there.
But nobody's ever going to admit that, because that would be a national headline. And
when you and I are dead, then they'll admit it.
Oh,
but not until it, and I mean long after we're dead too.
But
also all the people involved will have to be dead too. It'll take a long time.
It'd be 100 years. But
here's the interesting thing in the book is that this Steve Longero character, who was on the same training course, he actually told me when I interviewed him for 3.5 hours on a transatlantic call, that he had actually only been on shift for a few shifts. He'd only just arrived there within a day or two of Larry Warren. So he was new on shift. And when he went on shift, he was actually in the weapons storage area, the Bentwaters weapons storage area. So as a named person, going around with an experienced airman, walking around with their guns, when a UFO was over the fence line and then started to shine a beam down into the bunkers. So in the past, we'd had rumors, but now we have a direct first witness testimony from somebody who says, I was there, I saw the UFO, and I saw the beam coming down, and he said it did this. It did a pendulum all down, scanning the beam all the way down the weapons storage area hot row, as if it's scanning what's underground.
Yeah, it picked them up. Yeah, it might have been what he made them come there in the beginning.
Well, they
may have been cruising and it picked it up.
That's my private theory.
Well, we know that in the U.S. and in Russia, that a couple of times they showed up at nuclear silo bases and shut the bases down.
They turned them off.
They just actually it was so weird the way it was done. It wasn't like. You can't even call it a shutdown because it was like somebody flipped a switch.
Well, they went off one by one at like Robert Salas, Malmstrom 67. They went off 10 of them one by one, bling, bling, and there were like fail-safe systems that was pretty much impossible to do. Yeah. But the thing with Russia was that on that occasion they switched them on and they went into launch mode. 10 of them went into launch mode for about 15 seconds or so, causing consternation. And can you imagine? There's one thing switching them off, but there's another thing saying we're about to launch. Right. And that must have been pretty terrifying. But again, I think it was really just a demonstration of their power.
No, it was. That's all it was. It was like, look at me.
Yeah.
And it was an impressive demonstration. I mean, they came in and that's our strongest weapons we have on the planet by any means. And they just shut them off. They're like, yeah, and if we want to, we can launch them at your targets for you. I mean, you're thinking, okay, well, that's not even a good scenario. It's and I think they have been for a long time. For some reason, they don't interfere. They leave them on there. I guess if we nuke ourselves, they'll just clean up the planet and keep it for themselves. But but they do seem to like to keep tabs on our nuclear weapons. Yeah, going
back to the 1940s.
We've had submarines get scanned. Russia thought, matter of fact, what was this in 94, 95? Russia got scanned by this beam, this greenish blue beam, and they thought it was because they were being shadowed by one of our subs. They thought it was one of our subs, and they shut down, and all of their silos clicked. 2 of their doors opened. So they were freaked out about it, and then I forgot which one it was. They actually witnessed the whole thing going on, but they weren't. The sub that was following was just a Wolfpack sub. No nuclear weapons or anything. They were just tracking them. But the Russian sub actually had, I think, 18 warheads on board or 18 missiles on board. And they said 2 of the hatches opened.
Yeah.
And they freaked out, and because they were trying the sub that was followed. I keep wanting to say it was in California, but it's not who it was. I think it was actually somebody out of one of the Ohio classes. But anyway, they said they were trying to get hold to the U.S. and all of this was leaked. All of this was leaked. And this would have never got. I mean, the U.S. subforce is one of the most secret things we have. Even the Navy half the time don't know what the hell's going on. And somehow it got leaked. They said that they watched this happen. They thought at first the Russians were starting to launch. So they were trying to get hold to Washington or to the Pentagon to see if they needed to sink this sub. Nobody could get hold of anybody. And then all of a sudden, the Russian sub just went dead and just was sitting there. Just whatever its forward motion was still moving, but it was just, there was no power on board the ship at all. And then as the other sub pulled up behind it, they lost power. And then just as soon as it happened, I forgot what the guy said. He said there was like a blue passive light came over the American sub and everything started up and both subs went their own separate ways. That could have been World War III. And all because some aliens were playing what the hell you got in your submarine. It's but I guess they didn't launch. I guess they kept it from happening, but it's still one of the things you got to stop those kind of stories. Brenda, what do you mean? No, Gary said that in the beginning. So Rendlesham does not get the press Rendlesham should get. It just the Bentwater case. See, I call it Rendlesham. Some people call it Bentwater. It's got 3 different names, and for some reason, it's not like Roswell. Roswell's a household name around the damn world. And I was just telling Jay a little while ago before the show started, why is Roswell like that? I mean, everybody's dead. It's not even a case worth talking about anymore. Here's a case with actually live witnesses that watched all of this go down. Definitely disgraphs of what we would consider alien craft. And even Nick Pope don't want to talk about it. I'm confused.
There's a chapter on Nick Pope in the
book. I don't know if I want to read that chapter. Right.
Let me make this clear. This is not. I was a detective for a long time, 19 years, and an advanced police interviewer of suspects and witnesses. And so when I wrote the book, the first 6 months, I was trying to figure out, how do I write this book? Because it's such a complicated story, arguably the most complicated. Well, I certainly think it's the most complicated UFO case in history because there's so many moving parts, so many people, so many possible agendas, and the so many consecutive nights and different incidents. But realistically, what I came up with is just tell the facts and put out the facts, and that's what I've done. So there's very little sentiment in the book. It's really, I put out the facts and then I evaluate everything. So, for example, if there's an old interview of Jim Pennison being interviewed from 1987 or something like that, something really early 90s, after he'd retired, then I'll do the transcript of it, pick out the relevant bits, and then I'll evaluate it as an investigator would do. And that's what I do pretty much throughout the book. I evaluate all the evidence that's out there, and from all the professional reviews that I'm getting from researchers, they're all saying it should become the definitive book. But there'll be a lot of opposition to that because people don't want you to know what is in the book. You'll not see what I've written in the book anywhere else. For example, let me give you an example. When I went through there's 2 MUFON guys in the early 80s, Ray Boucher and Scott Colburn, who's sadly not with us now, but they were good colleagues at the time. And between 84 and 86, they did brilliant work investigating Rendlesham. And to my mind, Ray Boucher obtained what I think was an incredible admission from Colonel Holt. Do you want me to tell you about it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, imagine when I spoke to Ray Boucher as part of my research, and we had a Skype, and I said, I don't suppose you've got your research on Rendlesham. He said, yeah, I'll have it somewhere. And I thought, well, it'd be nice if you can find it. And he said, well, give me a couple of weeks, and I'll see what I can come up with. Well, anyway, I'm kind of thinking, it's a long time ago. You'd do well to do it all. But anyway, about 3 weeks later, I then get a PDF with 345 pages of material that he kept his entire research into the case over 3 years he'd scanned and given me up. And anyway, I read it in one session. I was that excited because this is like early testimony. He was the first person to talk to John Burroughs. He was the first person to talk to Colonel Holt in terms of an interview. He was the first person to talk to Adrian Bustinza. And so these were very early. We're talking 1984. So these are really early interviews. And he was the guy that was passing the information to Larry Fawcett, the Connecticut police detective who wrote Clear Intent with Barry Greenwood. Great book, great chapter on Rendlesham. But here's the thing. When I'm going through all these 345 pages, I literally, my eyes and my jaw dropped, because he tells this story that, having spoken to Senator James Exxon, who was a longtime senator for Nebraska, and they both lived, Scott Colburn and Ray Boucher lived in Nebraska. So they'd gone to James Exxon and said, you should be interested in this case in the UK because it involves US Air Force personnel and it's happened in England, and you should take an interest. And at first he was really dismissive, and then eventually they showed him the memo, and he started to get a bit more interested, that they met him personally. And so you've got that scenario going on with James Exxon. And at that point there, when Exxon's saying, well, I need a bit more to take it a bit more seriously, Ray Boucher decided to ring Colonel Holt. And this is, I think, April 1985. And anyway, he says, I'm Ray Boucher. Thanks for talking to me. He didn't pretend to be anything other than a MUFON researcher. He explained what MUFON was. And anyway, laid out the circumstances. I've spoken to Larry Warren, I've spoken to Adrian Bustinza, I've spoken to various people, and this is the story that I've learned. And he basically puts this story out. He says there's a landing, a second landing, and there is security police officers around it, and there are it's being filmed on either video or cinefilm. In motion picture footage is the way it was described. And Colonel Williams there, the base is, the base commander's there, base commander of 12,000 personnel. And to that, and he wrote verbatim, Holt says, yeah, I can verify all of that for the senator. So he told him all the circumstances, i.e. a second landing, security surrounded by security police. Colonel Williams was there and it was being filmed, motion picture footage. And Colonel Holt goes, yeah, I can verify all of that for the senator. Now, that is an absolute classic admission. And there's no ambiguity because, funnily enough, Holt then met Senator James Exxon. And after that, James Exxon wouldn't have anything to do with Ray Scott Colburn. And Ray Boucher was kind of like hacked off with that. And he was very persistent. So he'd ring up, he'd write letters on the cause letterhead. And he would be putting in letters and saying, come on, blah, blah. And he just got basically cold-shouldered. But in these letters, which a couple of them feature in the book, because I think they're so important as documentary evidence, anything written, when you see these letters, they are absolutely clear and unambiguous, because he lays out that paragraph that I've just said. I spoke to Holt on such and such a date, and I laid out the facts to him that there was a second landing, that it was surrounded by security police, that it was being filmed with motion picture footage, and that Colonel Williams was there, the base commander. And Holt said, yeah, I can verify all of that for the censor. So there's no ambiguity there. And that admission is, to my mind, absolutely, if you think about it, 1985, Ray Boucher had actually got Holt to admit one of the things he's never admitted to since.
Yeah, because he wasn't thinking about it.
Why is that never being asked in a documentary? In the 50-odd English-speaking documentaries made around the world ever since, have you ever heard Holt being asked about this admission? For me, that is a classic admission, and it was verbatim. And he made a point of saying that. I wrote it down verbatim. And when I saw that, I thought, wow, that's an admission in 1985.
Yeah, see, I'd have been all over
that. In that sense. Denied everything since.
Every time I would have seen, if I'd have known about that, every time I seen him, I would have asked him about that. I'd have been like, well, this is, you said this whole, tell me why you said it. Tell me why you're not saying it now. Because you know what? I'm really good.
Ever since he's denied that Williams was there, denied that there was that he was involved in another landing, denied that there was any kind of incident at all involving Williams.
I'm scary good at getting people to admit stuff they're not supposed to, man. It freaks people out.
And guess what? Another little quirk on this, while we're talking about Colonel Williams, who sadly has passed away, so we can't ask him, is that Grant Cameron, a few years ago, about 4 years ago, I'd invited him over to England to one of my UFO magazine conferences. And he was at my house, and he told me some interesting information. And there's a little transcript in the book where he said, there's been some military personnel, largely military personnel, Americans usually, pilots and military personnel who've got in close proximity to UFOs, and they've been interviewed by a guy called Kit Green, who was this doctor, former CIA, I believe, and for medical effects and close proximity injuries resulting in, serious injuries. And if you think about it, John Burroughs had serious heart issues and got a payout through the VA. Jim Penniston is rumored to be the same, got illness, injuries from it, and got, I believe, a payout. Now, here's the interesting thing. He said, about Rendlesham, he says, I think 3 of the witnesses have been interviewed for close proximity injuries. Who was it? Jim Penniston, John Burroughs, and Colonel Williams.
Shit, yeah.
Colonel Williams, the man who was not there, who was rumored by Larry Warren to be 10 feet away from these creatures in some kind of silent face-off with entities.
Yeah, well, you know how it is, though. You know how it is. Enlisted guys don't have as much pull as officers do. And when I'm talking about, especially as witness testimony, even everyday people, for some reason, will prefer to hear a testimony from an officer than an enlisted person, which is stupid, by the way, but it is the way the world works, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, it is, but it doesn't make sense, because if you think about, highest levels of power, if you think of Richard Nixon, he was impeached. He had to leave office. If you think about Iran-Contra and all of that, officers were lying because they were doing stuff. So it's, just the fact that you're an officer does not mean that you are whiter than white.
That's true. That's very damn true.
And that's a misnomer. But
it is very true.
In the UFO circle, and especially I think in America, all of these witnesses who were genuine witnesses to some of the events never questioned about anything difficult. Nope. You might be one of the few people who would ask a difficult question, but
because every game fluff. Every time I heard an interview with them, which I don't really hear hardly anymore, but every time I'd hear, it was always a fluff. I get irritated with fluff interviews. I really do. I mean, if you're coming to tell me about an experience, I expect you to tell me about an experience, not, and I don't want to have to sit there for 45 minutes or 2 hours pulling the answers out of you, because you're there to tell me what happened. See, like if I talk with Travis, say, Travis, tell me about this. He does. If I talk to Jim Sparks, that's some bitch. I ask him 2 questions. It'd be 2 hours before I get to ask another question.
Because they've got massive input and insight.
But when you got to sit there and pull something, it just makes me think people are lying when I got to sit there and either they've been threatened or they're lying. One of the two, you never can tell which one it is. Yeah. But I get to the point where I'm like, look, why did you come here if you don't want to talk about this? I mean, I had somebody just on a couple weeks ago. I said, you wanted to come talk about this experience. I said, I didn't know who you were until you wrote to me. I said, you want to talk about this? I said, you don't have to. I said, we can go talk about the weather or something, and you just get out of this. And before you scare yourself or do whatever it is you're worried about. And what you said about officers is completely true, ladies and gentlemen. I know y'all watch these movies and officers are all perfect gentlemen and whatever. That's not true. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to take away from the officer score. There's a lot of good officers in there, but there are people who justify doing things.
Same as everybody else.
They are human beings, but a lot of times they'll justify something because they're an officer, saying, well, I have to protect my men, or I have to protect the Corps, or I have to protect this. So they'll go out, lie, and do stupid crap, and they're justified because they're an officer. That's bullshit. You're there, you're the officer, you're the guy who's supposed to be the right guy, and if you can't do it, you need to step your ass down and move on. In Holt's case, I think I just basically think they told him one day, look, dude, don't talk about this. You're going to lose your pension.
I think they said to him, you can talk about this, what's in the memo, and nothing else.
Yeah, well, I agree. That's probably what they told him. They said, okay, you can look, this part you can talk about. Anything else that happened that those nights, you're not allowed to talk about. You cannot verify anything that anybody else has said or anything anybody else has heard. You can't verify those stories. Because I asked him one night about Larry. Well, he pissed me off, by the way, excuse my language. And he said something, and I said, well, I said something to him, and then I said, oh yeah, Larry Warren, and Larry Warren was telling me this, and he was saying something about how crappy Left at Eastgate was. And I said something. I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, Larry submitted the voice dress. I said, will you? And it was a big crowd. We had a big audience that night. And I'm like, look, dude, I said, like 2 million people listening right now. I said, plus all the people at this conference we were at, I said, are you going to answer the question? And they were like, well, no. And that was the end of that. I mean, we just went on to some bullshit, and then I let them go.
Let me just give you a bit of it. I won't name names because I wouldn't do that. But in the post publicity, once the book was out, I then contacted various people and shows that I'd been on before, and one was somebody I'd not been on there, but a MUFON, I'll say a MUFON lady. She agreed. Yeah, let's talk about the book. She then, having given me a date, then let me know. She said, I can't do it anymore. And I said, why? She says, well, I'm getting pressure not to have you on as a guest. And I thought, well, that's interesting. What are people hiding? I'm not hiding anything.
It's weird. And that happens. You get pressure. You know, I've been a couple times, I've been threatened about talking about specific things. And it's over the years, it's just part of the thing. But it's when they threaten your families when you really got to start getting bitchy about it. But in the end,
let me say something that is quite horrifying. Is when I did finally get a chance to speak to Sergeant Andrew Bustinza, who is an incredibly brave guy, a bit of a hero for me because he holds the key to a lot of these other events. And the reason why I believe Colonel Holt never really wanted to talk about Adrian Bustinza, despite the fact that Bustinza was part of his small team that went out in the forest and who was on the audio tape 3 times, so you couldn't deny that he was there. But the thing was with Adrian Bustinza, he was very heavily affected by what he saw. And I think he was a religious person or from a religious background, and that really unsettled him, the things that he saw. He suffered nightmares like a lot of others did, but he got a lot of family pressure. He was threatened with his life. And when I spoke to him on this transatlantic call that was 4.5 hours, and I tried to do what's called an enhanced cognitive model interview, which is like trying to really draw it out of him by getting him to go back there and concentrate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. And anyway, he really got into it, even though it's not designed for something that's 40 odd years later, because he'd never really told his story. When he did concentrate, I just let him talk. And that free recall was amazing. And at one point, he talks about his interrogation, and he's just talking. And he was taken underground. He was being basically marched there by 2 burly, probably office investigation guys who were taking him underground. He was given a hard time. He was threatened with his life. And when I heard it and transcribed it in its detail, and it's just raw, there's no interruptions. When you read it back in the book, and when you're proofing the book, I read it back as if I'm like an actor when it's something like that, to get the feeling of how it will come across. And when I read it back, it was incredible testimony, and a lot of people remarked upon it who've now read the book, and it was palpable, and the fear. And he said, I was a sergeant, and they are threatening my life and threatening my family. They're surveilling my home. My dad's job is on the line. He worked for the government. But he was indignant because he said, I felt like going AWOL after that interrogation. He says, because I'm a sergeant and I joined up to serve my country, and here I am being treated like a criminal. Now, why is this not being discussed? Why is this not on TV? Why are we really not talking to the real people who were interrogated?
Well, I mean, What were they all together? I mean, they had to be 15, 20 people out there over those 4 nights. I mean, there's a lot
Oh,
of people.
no,
They just
no, you probably the there are probably over the 3 to 4 what I think, and I'll go on to explain why I think it's now 4 consecutive nights, because that's based on Adrian Bustinza. Because the thing with the Larry Warren thing was, and we might as well talk about it now, is obviously he had been involved on Holt's night, which is generally regarded as the third night.
Yeah.
The first night is generally John and Jim Penniston, John Burroughs with the landed craft. The second night is Lieutenant Bonnie Tamplin, and we can talk about her because her story, never been told, sensational, never been told. And I can tell.
How the hell can it have never been told? Go outside. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, we'll come back to that, but this is the Adrian Bustinza. But Adrian Bustinza was clearly involved on the audio tapes, which we think is the third night. But when I interviewed Adrian, this 4.5-hour transatlantic call, and I didn't know what he's going to say, and I was trying not to prompt him, that I'm doing this all through the night. Imagine like doing this now, but you started at 1 o'clock in the morning, the sun's coming up, and I'm getting really tired because I'm concentrating on the questions. You know what it's like when you're concentrating, and that's mentally tiring. And the sun's coming up, I'm naturally getting tired, and I'm thinking, Christ, he hasn't mentioned Larry Warren basically in 3 hours. I need to get to this because this is important. And there was all the rubbish that was going on at the time. So I said, look, I am getting really tired now, but I don't want to stop you because what you've covered so far is amazing. And I'm glossing over the first 3 hours, which is amazing because there was a new sighting in that we can come back to. But suffice to say that he then said, no, Larry Warren was there, but it was on a different night. And I went, what do you mean it's a different night? He says, no, it was a different night. It was the second night of activity for me, of UFO activity. He never said that before, so nobody ever knew that. And I thought, okay, tell me more. And he said, yeah, Larry was there. He was closer to the craft than I was. And I don't know why they picked him, but he went forward towards it and I was just behind him. So there we are. After all these years, we have this confirmation. But he says it's on a different night, which actually in some ways makes it a bit more simpler to understand, because John Burroughs would always say, well, I don't remember seeing Larry Warren on that night, on the third night. Well, he wouldn't have been. It would have been another night. You see what I mean? So
yeah, it would have been the second night, yeah.
But the point is, he said it, and he wasn't put up to it. He just said it, and I said, well, describe the circumstances. He says there's a landing. He'd already talked about it many years ago to Larry Fawcett. That there was another landing. His description was totally different from any other case, and so he's talking about this second landing. And then he'd really gone all his life pretty much quiet. He didn't really want to talk about it. Certainly didn't want to do any press as such. Was very reluctant to do so. Did very little. And then to me, he's saying that it's another night of activity, which he'd never said to anybody before. So that was really interesting. And he basically saying that yes, Larry Warren was there. 2, he was part of a cordon surrounding a landed craft that was translucent, shimmering. You couldn't look at it direct. That Colonel Williams was there. But he said, I think, pretty much that Jim Penniston was there as well. He said Holt's there. And which now Jim Penniston's supposed to be on 6-day break after his first night encounter. So that's all. Steve Longero also says that on his night that Jim Penniston's involved. Well, I'm not saying it. They're saying it. So
well, that just means they kept him. Yeah, well, he's seen it the first night, so they kept him.
All right. So Adrian Bustinza then says, yeah, it's been filmed. It's been filmed on motion picture footage, some kind of, it's not still pictures. So again, basically, he was corroborating everything that Warren had said right from the early, late, 1983 onwards. And basically, it was corroboration. So here we had 2 people. This is a sergeant corroborating that there'd been a second landing, that Colonel Williams was there. It was being filmed. Holt was there. And this is an incident that is never supposed to have happened. And that's one of the reasons why I think Holt didn't want to talk about Adrian Bustinza, because he was the linking person to this second landing. He didn't want...
Which they were quite a bit more prepared for.
Correct.
Correct. Cameras, people.
But by then, it was three consecutive nights. By then, it was 3 and then possibly 4 consecutive nights. So by the time The fourth night comes along, which is basically what Adrian Bustinza is saying. He's not absolutely certain, but he's saying it's the second night, and it's probably a second consecutive night for him that this event with this second landing takes place. So it could well be a fourth successive night, but absolutely not. After all these years, you're never going to be certain.
Yeah, you're never be certain,
but the thing
well,
is,
it wouldn't surprise me.
It's the recall that's important. You're never going to get the precise dates, times now, and who and whatever. But those kind of memories will be ingrained into your psyche because they're so extreme, so different, and that's what had happened to him. But yeah, this was an amazing testimony, and that was, you know, revealed potentially a fourth night, but at least another night that we didn't know about, and that was what was important. But it corroborated everything that Warren had said decades earlier.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the other thing. I mean, yes, it was so weird because Larry came out, and then I guess somewhere, what was it, late 90s? No, maybe the early 20s, everybody started giving him nothing but crap.
It was about 2014, 2015.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, yeah, mid.
A group of people in the UK decided that he was telling lies, borrowed everything from him.
Oh yeah, and I got in all kind of trouble over that because I told a couple of them to go do something with themselves. I actually had people dedicate websites to me over Larry. I'm like, people. I said, all I said is I don't think he was lying. I said, I'm going to have to hear about this for the next year. Shit, they're still up there. They still got websites up there.
They're still there, and they're saying they've clearly not read the book. They bought the book because they put reviews on, and they've given it 1 star. These people that stand out, they've got to be a verified purchaser on Amazon. So the only way you got to buy the book. So that's ironic. They bought my book, but they're giving it 1 star and saying, "Oh, this is just the bullshit Larry Warren story." Well, it isn't. I'm not saying it. Adrian Bustinza is saying it. The guy who said who borrowed his story is the guy who's saying to me, "Read the book. It's there in the."
Well, it was who was it?
And it's ridiculous. But
one
these
of the
people are never going to agree with anything because of their mindset.
I had you and Larry on one night. I think we were actually in Christina George's show.
Yeah.
And we were all talking. Yeah. And it was, we got in all kind of conversations that night. And then I forgot who I ran into. It's big ufologist. And first thing out of his mouth, you really believe all that bullshit? I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, I like Larry, but I would believe anything Gary says. I said, because he's never lied to him and he's never done anything. He said, well, you don't think Larry's lying? I said, I'll tell you this for sure. I said, I can't tell you what went on with him and whoever. And I said, I can't tell you about artifacts because I don't know. I said, but I will tell you this. When it comes to Rendlesham, he's not lying. I said, take it for what it is. I said, y'all all know I do voice dressing now. I said, y'all know I got facial and body language. I said, you'll all know this. I said, he has given me no reason to think he's lying about Rendlesham. And I said, and everything else, don't take this the wrong way, people. I don't fucking care. It's not anything that was important to me. And I just, you know, Larry just never came off that big of a liar to me, so I never really worried about it. And the other one, I actually had busted in lies, so that hurt her more than it hurt him. I was like, and then, of course, I had to hear him whine. The only ones that's ever made me crazy on this whole case is Barrows and Penniston. They just make me crazy. Everybody else I kind of could deal with. But it was so funny, though, because they were like, and then he was like, well, who's Gary? I said, you know Gary. Gary's been around for a while. And then I realized he actually knew who you were when we got to talking. And he just kept going, well, no, he's lying about that. I said, lying about what? I said, be specific. I said, we're talking live now on the radio. Be specific. Tell me what you think it is. I said, I will bring his ass. I said, I will call him now, wake his ass up out of sound sleep and ask him the damn question. And they're like, no. I said, I'm not shitting you. I said, tell me what you think he's lying about. This went on for 15 minutes. And I kept pressuring them. They got mad and left. That's all they can do. Well, because there's nowhere else to go. And then I really think that Penniston and Burroughs put him up to it. I really do think, because he kept bringing him up during the show. And I said, well, I've asked him to come on many times. They're scared of me for some reason. Penniston thinks I'm like Satan or something. I said, I don't know what the hell it is, man. I said, they're scared of me. I said, I've interviewed Holt a couple of times. I said, but I said, the other two are scared. I said, he told me at a conference one time that I was, what was I? Oh, he's another one. He thinks I'm in charge of all the military abductions in the United States and Europe. I'm like, really? I said, people, y'all don't understand. If I was doing that, first off, I'd be like stinking filthy rich. And secondly, everybody I know would be getting probed at least once for good measure. It's like some of this shit that goes on, I swear. And then somebody asked me about Left at Eastgate. And frankly, I read that book, 20 years ago.
97 is when the first.
I couldn't even tell you. I'm sure I got crypt notes somewhere because I always make notes when I read a book for a show, but I couldn't even tell you what's in it anymore. It's I got now. You know what I do remember is like when I did all the audio, when I was doing all the voice dress. I remember all of those, and to me that was more fun because I got to hear the two goofballs, out in the woods playing around, goofing off, scaring themselves. But Larry's got this tone. He's talking with Peter, and you can hear him walking, bushes brushing, wind blowing, and they're just talking. There's no Larry's got his guard down. He's not thinking about anything. You can tell by about the third tape, he was completely relaxed. He wasn't even thinking about this was being recorded. They were just chit chatting just like anybody else would be. And Peter every now and then would just slip in a question, and he would just answer the question while they were doing whatever, or when they were by the spots or wherever it landed at. They went all up in the forest, and those kind of things are priceless because I already had a base on Larry. I had to ask him one night just some stupid questions that I knew he was telling the truth on. So I got a base on him early on. So once I had that, it was easy for me to go all through all these tapes and see if he was lying or not. And he just seemed to be very relaxed doing his thing. It's
let me tell you about when he did the polygraph. He did a polygraph exam, and I was present when in the setup for that. It was for the Cape of Green documentary that is slated to come out September this year. And there were 5 different cameras recording the room, and I was there, and the lady that was doing it is a lady called Patty Musicaro, who's American, who's married to a British guy and lives out of London, and we were invited to go down there just for the prep up, get the cameras all set up remotely, and I talked to Patty prior to the actual test taking place. I'd never done a polygraph or seen a polygraph, so I was fascinated because generally they're not used by the British police. But she did a lot of businesses, and she'd worked in intelligence in the UK. And she was, I believe, at the time was something like the secretary or the chairwoman of the British Association of Polygraph Examiners. That's probably not the right title, but something akin to that. And she was really open. She wasn't taking any money for it. She was doing it because it was just interesting. It's something she'd never done before in relation to a UFO context, as it were. So she was fascinated. And whilst I won't spoil it for the film, he passed the test. We left, and the test was undertaken for about 30 minutes, I think it was. And then we got a phone call, you can come back now, he's done the test. And then she announced to us that he'd passed the test. And not only did she say he'd passed the test, he passed it with flying colours, she said. And I think the exact words were something like very strong. He gave very strong charts, readouts, because there's 5 different tests that are all being 5 physical things that are attached to you to read your base levels, etc., your sweat and whatever. And he passed very strong tests. And what I can say, without going into too much detail because of the film, is that when she told him that he'd passed, we weren't there. And that was just filmed. And it is an incredibly powerful human moment. That's all I'm going to say. And I would be very surprised if a lot of people don't have tears welling up in their eyes when they see it, because it's kind of a beautiful moment. And I won't go into more than that, but it's a very human. And Patty says something afterwards that when people are telling the truth, their reactions afterwards being told the truth that they've passed, you can't lie that emotion. And his reaction was, she said, a brilliant reaction, basically.
Well, when I looked her up, she came pretty highly recommended. So
she did, but here's the thing. Let's get this out there, because you're gonna get people after the show saying, no, Patty Musicaro, she's terrible. She's absolutely a fraud. Well, she wasn't. She was the chairwoman of she'd done over 2,000 tests. And here it is that one jealous fellow Examiner had put a critical comment on her on the internet, and that's she can't get rid of it. So basically, the trolls of this world focus on that, forget
Of
about
course
it.
they do.
But I'm now giving you the context. So when you'll hear people saying, "Oh, she's a fraud," it's based on one comment, and it turned out to be founded. And
I didn't even see that, to be honest with you. When I looked her up, everything came up good and clean.
She was good. She's a beautiful, really
And
nice.
I'm gonna tell you a secret, because I got a lot of friends in hypnosis, including myself. I made a couple of phone calls. I shouldn't even say this on the air. And I got hold to one of her people and talked to him, because I knew I was doing that thing for y'all. So I got a hold to him and talked to him. And they told me, I'm not gonna say who it was. They said they were spectacular. She was spectacular. She did a great job. Made him feel very relaxed. And they went right through it. And she said the girl it was. She said, I tried to lie on this one thing, just to see if it was real. And I was busted instantly. I started laughing. And but she gave her flying recommendations, and most of what I seen on the internet was good. It's I was just looking because I'm always nosy anyway,
but you should be. You're
well,
investigating.
polygraphs, I tell people that, just like voice stress, none of these are 100%. But so this, ladies and gentlemen, and I like to enforce this to people.
94%, I think. Yes.
So depending on the instructor, 94 to 98%. So if you've got an instructor who's been doing this 30, 40 years, the odds of you fooling them is less than 2%.
Yeah.
So an FBI guy gets a 97% rating when they do, and they use them all the time. And let me tell you what, big business still uses polygraphs. You can still be fired by a company based on a polygraph. A lot of them, so they use voice stress and some people like to use both. That way they know for sure it's two different people with two different methods. And if they both say you're lying, odds are you're lying. And I got to be honest with y'all. So far, I've done, I don't know, 12, maybe 1,400. And it would be hard to lie to me without the voice stress. But with it, there ain't no freaking way. There's just no way you're going to lie. You're not going to get away with it. And believe it or not, even though I tell people I do this, they still try. And
one of the things that I always liked about Larry, because I'd met him over the years, we weren't friends as such, but we weren't enemies either. But we'd meet him at conferences, so we'd have a chat and whatever, and I knew who he was, and we got to kind of know each other. But one of the things I was always impressed was, especially when you're at conferences, is that you know what it's like at a conference. People are coming up to your left, right, and centre. You try to go to the toilet, you get stopped by 10 people on the route, and coming out the same. You try to get a drink, and somebody's asking a question, and they're all well-meaning people. So you spend the time and you talk to people, but literally you're getting bombarded with questions. Well, I'd seen Larry Warren being approached by these dozens of people for many years. He's
a likable guy,
and he would go like this. They'd ask a question, he'd go, no, there's no thought, instant come out. There was no, do I need, can you repeat that question? I need to think about how I answer it. There was no, it was bang, bang, bang. And that was always very impressive to me as an advanced interviewer. But people don't like that, you see, because people have drawn up lines of rules. They're trying to create a false narrative. They really did want to, and nearly.
They need him to stutter. They need him to
take him out the story altogether.
They need to have those little things where they can say he's lying. But
absolutely,
I did a fun interview with him. I had him on one night with Jim Sparks. It was this freaking interview. They wore it was a 3-hour interview too. They wore me out, man. I was tired, and I went and pigged out. So I started asking them both questions about what's happened to him. And I said, well, we'll do it like this. We're going to play tag. I'm going to ask you this question, and when you're done, you start on your question. Jesus. So I'd give them like 2 at a time. 45 minutes done going by in this show. I ain't said a word, man. Not even a word. And then, I let X amount of people ask questions per show. And the second time I put all these questions up from the audience, and they're just bam, 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 bam. It was like playing tennis. It's just bam, watching them go back and forth. And somebody wrote in and said, well, you're not saying nothing. I said, there's no reason for me to say anything tonight. I said, I know both these guys. I've interviewed both these guys multiple times. And I said, I want y'all to get the benefit of how they are. I said, I brought them both on because I wanted you to see someone who had just a straight out contact, not an abduction that we know of, just a straight out contact, and somebody who had experience with aliens. I said, technically they're both Americans, even though one lives in Australia and one lives in the UK. I said, but they're both Americans, and it was a great. I think we did like 3.3 million at night, and I think the archive did well over 4 million. And so it was, and people enjoyed it. They had a lot of fun with it, and there wasn't a lot of haters. Somehow we got through that night without a lot of haters, which is nice. With Larry, it's, you never know. With Jim, it's rare, but with Larry, it's 70-80, 70-30. You might run into somebody. Most of the time, they don't come on my show because they already know I like him, and I'm a you know what. So they usually stay away from me. And because I'll tell them, look, you don't like the show. They got a little thing. It's called, I said, it's a little mouse or a little dial. You can just turn it and you don't have to listen no more. I said, if we're offending you that much and you're getting that crazy and you're losing sleep over it, just move on.
Do you want me to tell you about something that nobody knew?
Yeah, I always want you to tell me about something nobody knew.
Right. In the book, Adrian Bustinza has got the biggest chapter because I plotted everything he'd ever said, literally since after the incident. There's about 100 pages, something like that, 80 pages, something like that. So very pivotal character in what he told me. And I actually followed it up with an interview on Skype on video. So that was done as well. But let's go to what I think is one of the major cover-ups of Rendlesham that literally nobody knew until this book is out. And that was one of the guys who played a part in the story. There's a chapter on what's called precursor cases, which are 3 incidents that took place throughout 1980 in the build-up. 3 important UFO cases involving Bentwaters and Woodbridge. And one of them relates to a guy called Michael Stacey Smith, who went on to become a sergeant, but he was an airman at the time. And Michael Stacey Smith, lovely guy, interviewed him several times. And in one of those interviews, after getting his involvement in the precursor, he kind of like made a throwaway comment about Bonnie Tamplin. Well, for those of you who don't aware, Bonnie Tamplin was a shift commander, a young female black officer, very popular, highly regarded, doing really well. And over the years, the story was that something had happened to her that was so traumatic that she had to be taken off shift. She was so traumatized. But that was really the end of the story. Nobody knew the real story. Well, when I talked to Michael Stacey Smith, he made this comment that alluded to more. So when I questioned him further, it turns out that he played a part in her night, which we now believe is the second night, which is the 26th into the 27th. So the first night, Jim and John, is 25th into 26th. Second night is 26th into the 27th. This is Bonnie Tamplin. We didn't really know. So this is the story. Michael Stacey Smith, the story emerged in what we did know was from and I don't quite understand this, but an airwoman, still called an airman. I guess it's the 80s, but yeah, Laurie Bowen was technically airman first class, and she was posted to the East Gate after the first night incident through John and Jim. And she then sees a red glowing ball of fire drop into Rendlesham Forest. And she uses the telephone from a guard shack, tells Central Security Control. And it turns out that Lieutenant Bonnie Tamplin was actually on mobile en route from area Bentwaters along public roads en route to area Woodbridge and the back gate where she was. And she responded on the radio, I'll investigate that. That's what we knew prior to the book. And then what happened was, according to Laurie Bowen, is a few minutes later, she's coming over the radio screaming, help, 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 Bobby, 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 as into Bobby Ball, Sergeant Robert Ball, who responded to her first. Well, that was literally the story. And then we get Michael Stacey Smith's take on it. And it turns out that he was the first person witness to some of the events. And this is the bit that's filling in. And so what he said was, on the night this happened to Bonnie Tamplin, he didn't obviously know what was going to transpire, but he was suddenly told, go open up the back gate of RAF Bentwaters, and it was called the Butley Gate, Butley, the Butley Gate. It was the rear gate onto a little back road, public road, that would 4 miles down the road, 5 miles down the road, would take you to Woodbridge. And so he says, get down there quick. Didn't know what was going on. Get down there. He opens up the gate, and then suddenly there's a convoy of US Air Force police vehicles, security police, turning up, and they're in a hurry, and he doesn't know what it's for, because he's on a different transmission net, radio frequency to what's going on. So he's aware that something's going on, because there's suddenly a convoy rushing, and he's being told to get there quick and open up the gate. Well, anyway, these vehicles, 2 or 3 vehicles, go out at speed, and then a few minutes later, this is where it gets interesting, because then a few minutes later, a vehicle comes back, a military vehicle comes back to the gate where he's at, and this time it's been driven by Sergeant Robert Ball, often referred to as Bobby Ball, and his passenger is Lieutenant Bonnie Tamplin. No beret, she's dishevelled, she's clearly shaking like a leaf, traumatized by something. He witnesses that as a direct witness. So in they go, and Robert Ball is the driver. A few minutes later, a second vehicle arrives, a military vehicle turns up, and it turns out that it's Bonnie Tamplin's vehicle, still drivable, but had sustained rooftop damage consistent with having rolled the vehicle. Interesting. So he's a direct witness to this. And then that goes in. So her vehicle had been in some kind of accident and had sustained rooftop damage to the vehicle. Crumple, I guess, but it was still drivable. So that's interesting. That's direct testimony. Now, he didn't know what had happened, but afterwards he speaks to a sergeant who he knew well, and the sergeant says, "If I tell you this, you must never reveal my name. Swear to me." And he said, "I respect you. I'll swear to that." And so the sergeant told him what had happened. So there we go into a hearsay account, but it kind of sounds plausible, because what he said was, she's driving along the public road, responding. So this is a British rural country back road between the 2 bases of Bentwaters and Woodbridge. And she then is approached by a UFO, a red glowing ball, that runs parallel with a vehicle at hedgerow height. She is so traumatized by this, she loses control of the vehicle on a British rural public road and rolls it into a ditch. She goes off the road, she rolls the vehicle. Now get this, she gets out, she clambers out, and the UFO stopped and hovered and was looking down at her. She is so traumatized that she picks up her M16 and discharges several rounds at it. And then the UFO goes. That's when she's on the radio, help, 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 Bobby, Bobby, Bobby. Right? And we know that several rounds were discharged, because Holt had said, I heard that rounds had been discharged. I heard this later. I'm not sure I quite believe all of that, or his vagueness of it, put it that way. But suffice to say that the story goes that the rounds that were discharged, however many there were then put back in the blocks, because if you sign out 60 rounds, they're in wooden blocks. You have to sign back 60 rounds to the armourer. They put those rounds back in, and it was all quietly forgotten about. This happened on a British public road. The police weren't called. There's an accident. There's a now, what a story this, and what a story that's been totally covered up all these decades. And now we get this story, and I have no reason to disbelieve Michael Stacey Smith. He's an honourable guy, and he with ill health from UFO stuff as well. And he's had no help, and he needs help. But Michael Stacey Smith, like all of these people, are heroes, but they don't get a look in.
No, they don't get a look at it. And I don't.
They just criticise. No, this is just clutter. No, they don't even get a voice, and that's wrong, because these people.
But I learned something a long time ago when it comes to this kind of stuff. People like you and I are going to have much harder time than the people who just talk bullshit. Okay, absolutely. So if you ever go to a ufology conference, I used to go a lot when I was younger, just so I could meet people and talk to them, and I was actually disappointed a lot of the time. But what I found most of the time, it was the same people speaking at different conferences saying the same shit. And it's still the same way today. So what I found, and I should have realized this, a good friend of mine in media told me this about 20 years. He said, Joe, he said, you're doing real research. You're talking about real stuff. He said, they don't want to hear that. He said, that's not going to sell. That's not going to sell tickets. And he's like, when we broke the blood type thing about a decade ago, Ancient Aliens picked it up. They wanted to talk about it. Other people wanted to see it. But when it was probably one of the biggest things that happened to ufology since it's on there. And they're like, it's like this case. This is a really good, solid case with lots of good, solid witnesses. It's proof of some type of landing by some type of alien craft. We know it wasn't Russian. We know it wasn't American. We know it wasn't British. We've got multiple witnesses on multiple nights. And for some reason, this damn thing can't even make the mainstream press.
I'm trying now, and they don't want to play ball.
And think about it. Right now, the U.S. is flipping out over UFO shit. We got the Pentagon saying they got alien motherships, and we still won't talk about this case.
But this case has the gravitas to actually be a major player. And that's the frustration, is it shows you the gravity of the case that the Americans don't want to talk about.
If we could
are involved.
Yeah, well, if we could somehow enforce the fact that we're not going to talk about your nuclear weapons being stored on the base, we might be able to get somebody to talk about it. But they're just, and it's too late. It's that is over and done with. Those treaties don't even exist anymore. So there's no reason to worry about what we had on that base. Yeah, we broke the policy. Nobody's going to be surprised that we broke the freaking policy. I mean, come on. It's just going to be just another policy that we were supposed to adhere to.
You would think that story, and I've no reason to disbelieve Michael Stacey Smith, that story that's been covered up for decades should be a front page story somewhere.
It should be. It should be at least making a tabloid. Think about it. It's not even making a tabloids. I mean, what the hell's going on?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't get it sometimes. I see things that shouldn't be in the news that are just ridiculously stupid. Anything that seems to be good, it's and anytime we release real information, which we do a lot, it either gets stolen by other researchers who want to use it to make get a lecture tour or something, or it's just gets played down by everybody who can play it down. And I don't even care anymore. I mean, I said, somebody told me, you don't get upset. I said, no, I'm on a radio station. I'll put it out. They can't stop me from putting it out. I said, if they don't want me to speak it at the conferences, the station gets 60 million listeners. Somebody's going to hear it. I'm like, screw it. I'm not really, spectacularly worried about it anymore, but I'm in a unique position for a lot of people. I can get away with a lot of people who are trying to get the truth out or just finding themselves beaten against wall. If you went, well, I remember, because I used to be one of the young ufologists, now one of the old bastards, but we used to bitch about the old guys all the time about, see, it's the same thing. You would have thought these young guys who now the old guys would have learned, but they didn't. They just turned into the old guys. They want to keep their lecture tours. They want to keep their little things. They want to keep this.
I'm on the outside because I'm over in the
yes,
UK. But I've done several lectures in the States, but only 3 times. And one of them,
but you make sense. That's why you're not going to get into a lot.
But they don't. But literally, I look in and I think that the UFO circuit in America is very clicky. And that's
it's very clicky.
And it's like nobody wants to rock the boat. But
and they hate me for that.
People, I think for the audience, they're getting shortchanged because they're not really getting new information.
They're not getting any information.
It's just
most of this stuff is 20, 30, 40 years old. It's ridiculous. When I used to play the game with everybody, and we'd invite everybody, and I was doing 2 guests a night, and we had, billions of questions. Oh, yeah, I was getting invited to speak everywhere. And then I can't remember where it was. It was either the 10th Exopolitics, or maybe it was the 60th Roswell. I don't know, but I realized I'm sitting there, and I liked some of these people, but I'm sitting there going, oh, my God. This is like the 10th conference in 2 years, and I couldn't take it anymore.
Same story.
But it's not even just I'm seeing the same people attending these conferences. I'm like, okay, this is just it. And at that moment, it felt like it was wasting my time and my organization's time. I'm like, look, these people know everything I know anyway that I've talked about. So if they want to take it or not, that's their business. I need to find different people to talk to. I need to get this out to people around the world and let people know, and other people in our country that can't afford conferences and crap like that. It's it's them kind of conferences will make you crazy, man. It's insane. All right, Jay, we're gonna have to get Jay some coffee, man. Gary's it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning where he's at.
Hey, I'm fine. I'm buzzing.
We only got about 10 or 15 more minutes anyway, so we're gonna get out of here. But it's What's that, Darryl? What you got? What do you mean?
Water.
No. Somebody just asked me that. I was just asking this question or looking at his question. What are you talking about? Oh, Helsia Wilmington's question. That's who you're asking. Okay. So Helsia writes, you want to know if you are a police officer and if you're single. Actually, she wanted to know if you're a police officer and not married. That's what the comment actually says.
I am technically married, but I'm separated, and I have a lovely new girlfriend who I've been with now.
Oh, see, that's just as bad. So
I was 6 years in the Royal Air Force Police, guarding 2 nuclear weapons storage areas, one at RAF Honington in Suffolk, not a million miles away from Bentwaters and Woodbridge. And then I was posted out to what was then West Germany, RAF Larbruck, which is very down at the southern end of Germany, near the Dutch border, near a place called Venlo. And Mönchengladbach was really the nearest major town, German town. And I basically guarded nuclear weapons, doing exactly the same job. In fact, interestingly, somebody sent me a link of Jim Pennison talking on another show, a little known show, but he was talking and he was saying, "Oh, Heseltine, he's saying that he guarded nuclear weapons, but he don't know anything." Well, I did it for 3 years, so I think I do, and I don't think there were really much difference between guarding tactical nuclear weapons.
Well, I mean, what do you got to know to guard a nuclear weapon?
Anyway, that's fine, but what I'm saying is that there is so much opposition I am finding to actually wanting to know the truth. And that's, again, was a deliberately policy on my part not to do any pre-publicity, just drop it out there.
Well, we'll see how many haters we get.
Bottle, you can't put it back in, which is the same as the Navy fighter, the 3 videos. You can't put them back in the bottle. And they're a game changer. It's not the New York Times article, although that's really important. But those videos were the first time people would say, "What is that?" and track it and go, "What is that?" Ask legitimate questions. And they were confirmed, authenticated, and they didn't know what they were. And this has raised the issue and the air safety and whatever. But you can't put the genie in the bottle, back in the bottle. And that's literally why I did the book with no pre-publicity. And now that's what I'm trying to do now. But there is opposition there, and especially in America. And it's like,
they're going to push back on
this because these are American airmen and they deserve to have a voice. And that's the key thing. Going back to the question, I did 6 years in the Air Force, and then I did 24 years in the British Transport Police. And for the last 19 years of my service, I was a detective constable, not a high rank, but it's the guys on the ground who do all the interviews with murder, manslaughter. I was an advanced interviewer of suspects and witnesses, 2 different techniques. And I became qualified in 1995, and I retired in 2013 early to create my own online e-zine, bi-monthly e-zine called UFO Truth Magazine, which goes all around the world, and it's in PDF format, and you just send to your email. But in terms of the book, was a labour of love. I didn't intend to write the book, but it's only because the documentary was taking so long, and actually when I delved down deep,
it taking a long time too. I mean, Jesus.
It took me 3 years to write, but it's because there was so much information, and that's why it's ended up at 500 pages. But the reviews that I'm getting from people like Don Schmidt, Roswell fan, he's done the foreword, and I'm indebted to him. It's a beautiful foreword, and they like it, and I'm getting excellent Gamma and excellent reviews. So I leave it for other people to say how good or bad it is. But what I'm saying is there is more information in that book that you've never seen, old interviews, new stuff, and people don't want to know. Largely, they don't want to know.
Yeah, they don't want to know.
I'm not going to stop. And people like you, that's why I say, if you like the book and read it, then try to promote it.
Oh yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I was just because I was getting ready to answer somebody. They had asked me when I was bringing it back. I said, "Well, I sent him my email. I sent him my address. Actually, I said when he sends me the book, I'll read it." I said I'm really busy over the next couple of weeks because I'm going to be doing the Writers of the Future stuff down. And man, you ought to submit it to write it. Is it more than 17,000 words?
800, nearly 200,000 words.
Oh Jesus! Okay, you think you L. Ron Hubbard, right? 100,000 words plus.
100,000 words, but it's an assessment of all the key players. I've interviewed probably 15, 20 military witnesses, gone back to them, re-interviewed them, and got more information.
No, that's how it should be done. So I'll
And
just
that's
read
how
it.
it
I'll
should
read
be
it in
done.
sections.
And I'm hoping that the book will reach the people who haven't come forward, like Lieutenant Bruce England, never gone public. Robert Ball went in a couple of documentaries in the early 90s, never seen since. Sergeant Ray Gullias, if these people are still alive. Major Zickler was believed to be involved. Captain Mike Verano, if you're out there, please come forward and talk to me. Because I'm on your side. I want to get the truth out there. I'm not interested in the politics. I'm interested in getting
And
the
don't
truth.
worry, the Air Force isn't going to take your pension because you talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, the sad thing is that this case is now nearly 43 years old, and people will start to die soon. Colonel Williams has already left us, so we can't ask some of these pertinent questions about whether he really was at a second landing, because we just can't do it now because they've passed away. Well, people are going to die as they're getting older, inevitably. And so we're running out of time. And I think there is so much more information that's still out there. I absolutely believe there are dozens of witnesses who have got some part to tell in this story that have yet to come forward, and several of which I were in communication with that said, I will not go public because I don't like the way the case is portrayed in the media for the last 25 years. And basically summing up, the four people that have controlled the narrative and documentaries, Colonel Holt.
Wait, see, without Holt, that
leaves... and Nick Pope, they've controlled it for the last 25 years, and you are not getting the real story.
No, you're not. You're getting
My aim is to try to get the voice to the others, because they're all victims, saying they're all part of it, however large or small their story is. They deserve to have a voice, and they're not getting a voice, and I'm fighting for these people.
Philia, no, I've tried to interview both Barrows and Prince, and they're just not interested. They're scared of me. They're scared of the questions I'm going to ask. Is what the problem is. Well, one of them wrote to me when I wrote. He said, "Well, you're friends with Larry, and you're just going to be an ass." I said, "No, I'm just going to ask you questions." I said, "I don't even care if Larry was with you." I said, "I'm just asking you questions about your night and what happened." And they even that was just too much for him. So I was like, whatever. I get aggravated with stuff like that. And then I forgot who it was who sent me over all that time travel stuff on several interviews they had done on TV and other places. I said, okay, that's enough for me. I said, I got to move on. It's not that, hey, whoever sent me that. No, I believe in time travel. I just don't believe these two idiots with time traveling.
What I say on the binary cards is I'm respectful. I do it professionally. But what I'm saying is that Jim Peniston didn't mention it until the Woodbridge conference publicly, and until the 30th anniversary. But at the same time, he told the audience that he did know about it from 1994 because he'd been hypnotized, and it came out then under hypnosis. And that he said he'd worked with Linda Moulton Howe for a book called Glimpses of Other Realities that came out in 1998. So how he could tell the audience that he didn't know what it was and it was all gibberish, I don't understand. He then
I can't take them to. They just I don't even think they could pass the polygraph.
My conclusion is based on the evidence, and having had an interview with his co-author Gary Osborne online on social media, that Gary Osborne admitted to me on social media that it's a standalone account. There's nobody corroborating his alleged time travel story. And so I said, in conclusion, one, he should get a polygraph, because that would help him, give him a bit more credibility that he maybe did have a download of it. And I'm not saying you can't have a download of information. I do think you can. But it's a question of whether he had a download. And he went on a show called the Angela Joyner Show. She's sadly not with us anymore.
Yeah, Angela that's one of our shows, man.
He went on a show with her within 12 days of telling the Woodbridge audience. And that is, you should listen to it because it's very contradictory. And he says in that interview, 1 minute he didn't know what it was, gibberish, and the next minute he's saying to her, "Yeah, I knew who it was right from the off."
No, I'm pretty sure I produced that show. So.
And I'm thinking, well, that's just pure contradiction. So in the end, I basically just sum it up and say, look, it's a standalone account. There is no corroboration. And for me, with the inconsistent remarks that he's made over the years, I would say it's unproven.
Yeah, I would agree. Frank, you can get Angela Joyner's stuff. You cannot get it off our YouTube or of our Roku feeds. You can find it on SoundCloud and Podbean. Some of the older archive sites will have it. Unfortunately,
some transcripts of all of these interviews in the book, and that's why people are liking it, because I've done all the detective.
Well, no, that's a great thing to do. It is.
And I evaluate each of these interviews and each of the comments, pertinent comments, and say why. You know, I ask questions that people don't ask.
Yeah, Carl's. No, she was a great host. Angela Jones was a great host. She started with us right after the Stevensville event, and she got on with us. A friend of mine, Dee Andrews, brought her on, and she was with us until she got out of radio. And then her and her husband both got COVID and died at the same time.
Oof.
Yeah, tragic.
Yeah, it was rough. I mean,
But
and I knew him well.
if you listen to that interview, her reactions to his nonsensical replies, her reactions to like "I'm amazed and confused," is really telling that she's confused by what he's saying to her.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's what she used to do for a living. So I mean, somebody asked me one time, asked me about her. I said no, she was a reporter before she came on the network, and her and I did a lot of the oil spill stuff together. We did a lot of stuff together, but a lot of those she liked to get into that UFO stuff, and she checked out a lot of stuff that a lot of the journalists and the other news was scared to touch. But we had a big enough audience that she could get out there and make a difference. But it's sad she passed. She'd probably be back on the network now that we got TV. She'd love being on TV. Yes, Denise, we're on Roku television. You can see our lovely faces, all three of us, handsome gentlemen. You can go watch on Roku. And look, if you got a 70-inch TV, look, baby, I'm like, come on, sweetheart. It's yeah. But you can. No, we're on TV. Yes, well, we'll be on Amazon soon too. But we got to get one stable before we get on another one. I will get Gary to tell you in a minute where you can get the book, but I'm going to read it probably sometime in between the time I go to LA and the time I go to New York. And I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to get hold of Gary. We're going to do another interview. Well, because he's already mentioned, he's already mentioned a bunch of stuff that I could right now. I could just go through the book and pick and choose because he's already mentioned like 5 dozen things I want to go read about.
Let me just give you one more, just a little tiny one more. Right. Guess what came out and corroborated by several military witnesses during my investigation is that all the radio channels, at least 3 of the 4 radio frequencies, were routinely recorded on reel-to-reel tape, audio tape.
That doesn't even surprise me.
Now you think about that. That means the evidence did exist. Exactly.
It still does somewhere.
Wouldn't that be nice to get these tapes?
Oh, yeah.
And amazingly,
somewhere at one of them big warehouses.
Jim Pennison's never mentioned it. John Burroughs mentioned it. But Colonel Holt's never mentioned this, and I think that's highly pertinent. And we've got several people that talked to me and said that they were routinely recorded. And Adrian Bustinza at one point says that he was sent an envelope, not addressed from anybody, and he got it, and it had 3 of the tapes from the Holt night, the different channels proving this incident, and he had that evidence. But when he was getting so much pressure from his parents, he burnt it in a fire pit.
Oh, shit.
After so many years, he just burned it. But he says, I got this envelope out of the blue. And he said, no markings on it. I look inside, and there's 3 radio frequency channels that there were law enforcement, central security control, and security police. And they would have been...
that was gold.
Brilliant. Wouldn't it be brilliant to listen to those and listen to what happened to Bonnie Tamplin, what transpired, what happened on the 3rd night, the 4th night, and the 5th night. Well, and give you one more as well. One more little one that you won't have heard about. There's a guy called Steve Wagner who'd had a precursor case, one of these early 3 cases that are discussed in the book. He then has a Christmas, December 1980 event, but he said it was on the 23rd of December, before Christmas. And he said he was called to the East Gate at Woodbridge, where a lot of these things happened. And he said the airman was so traumatized, and he said someone had landed over there, not far from the gate. And at that time, now the trees are different now, but at that time, he went into a clump of trees approximately 150, 200 yards from the East Gate, where it was then located, because it changed position slightly. And he said he came across 3 ground impressions in an identical triangle, equilateral triangle, but he said the depressions were each about 5 feet wide. 5 feet. And he said he didn't report it because when he reported his earlier precursor case, he got bollocked. He was told, keep quiet.
Yeah, stop. Don't talk about it. Yeah.
Didn't do it again, but he said to me, he said there were 3 indentations approximately. Each pod was 5 feet depression, as opposed to the original first night landing of about 8 or 9 inches.
Yeah, they're little tiny things. Yeah.
So now we're talking 3 big 5-foot pods landing in.
Yeah.
It's definitely getting bigger each night.
I think the way Pennison described the original craft on his night was that it was about 6 feet long and about 7 or 8 feet tall, and that's about it.
Pennison describes it as being 3 meters by 3 meters, 2 meters high, like black glass that was emitting some random lights from within. It appeared to be at or near on the ground, possibly on some kind of legs, which were the depressions later on. But John Burroughs, who was stepped back several meters, he never described it as a craft. He said it was a bank of lights that hinted at structure, but from his location, his perception was different. He says he just saw lights, a bank of lights. He drew them. But that's fine. Perceptions are different. And Jim Pennison was closer to it. But Jim Pennison said he walked around it, took photographs, all came out. He was told it came out fogged. He drew pictures in his notebook, but it was a notebook that didn't surface for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that would have bugged me right off the bat.
It's a bit off.
I don't like things that pop up like that. It irritates the hell out of me.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, look at this.
Yeah. Well, it's like when they told me about Betty and Barney Hill's dress 40 years later. I'm like, really? That doesn't work. Oh, we found it. No. And then, we found the star system. I'm like, you did? I said, I can make any star system match. I get so irritated with crap like that. No, Janine. No, as soon as I get him back, we'll talk about all of that stuff. What do you mean? Oh, you're asking me about Peter Robbins? I haven't talked to Peter in like a decade. You mean, does he like Larry? He still sells the book. Yeah, the book's still for sale. You can still get the book for. I'll tell you what I would do. I would get Gary's book first because I already know it's going to be good. It's going to be a little technical for some of y'all, but you need to get in there and really just read it. And then if you want to read Left at Eastgate, go ahead. Left at Eastgate is just an account that Larry Warren talks about. But I would start with Gary's book first and then work my way backwards is what I do. And Martha, for what you said, I actually think this will help Capel Green. I don't think this will hurt the movie. I think this will actually help the movie. I think Gary's book coming out ahead like this will actually help. I think it'll bring new life to something that people have kind of forgotten about. So it will help Capel Green to get out into the population. But I would bet you money on it. I would think if Gary wouldn't have done this, it would have been a much slower start for the movie than it's going to be. I know a lot of y'all want to whine and moan and cry, whatever, but I've been doing media for 25 years, and I'm telling you, this kind of stuff, all this information he's talking about is just going to help more people go watch the movie. No, Gary has not a blog. What is it? A magazine? What you got? I know you said
a magazine. It's a bi-monthly PDF magazine, 96 pages. It features articles by many of the world's leading.
Oh no, Carol, he never writes about me, Carol. He don't love me like he does everybody.
You were in the book.
I know. It's I didn't know that. That's cool too.
How many chapters did he get?
I get like 8 words.
He gets half a page, about 3/4 of a page.
Yeah, that's cool.
There you go.
No, because if you're telling the evidential story, the main thing with Joe is his voice stress analysis, and I interviewed him at my home over the internet and recorded that. Dion, the director of the film, also was recording on his cameras as well, but I also recorded on my cameras. Yeah. So we both kind of own those interviews, but I got my own copy. And I just quote where you say that you'd interviewed him several times, you'd done him live, and it literally passed every time. So which is good testimony, and it should be there, but in a sense, that's all I'm concentrating on. I'm just telling.
Well, that's all you need. Yeah, that's what it's about. I mean,
I don't need to talk about personalities. I'm talking about the facts.
I actually agree with that.
Should do in a reinvestigation.
But again, Glenn, I would start. I already know there's a bunch of stuff Gary and I've talked about tonight. I already want to go see. I would start out with non-human, then go get Left at Eastgate and wait for Capel to come out. It'll be out in September, and do it like a trousseau like that. That way, you get a good feel.
You'll get get the greatest overview now after 42 years that you've never had today. The earliest really book that tried to do what I've done and did a good job was You Can't Tell the People by Brunei, but that was 2000. So literally since then, you've got different books that have come out, but different perspectives with different agendas and different storylines. Whereas the book that I've tried to do now is a reinvestigation of the whole case, warts and all, and looked at just the evidence and presented that out in many transcribed interviews, long forgotten interviews that I think are important, information that I think should have been in documentaries for the last 30, 40 years that haven't been, that the narrative is controlled. And that's the only conclusion you can, because
that's only
those other people's voices, the other airmen, men and women who were involved, don't get a look in. They're criticised, and that's wrong, because they're all a part of something that's terrible. For many of them, had terrible traumatic, post-traumatic stress, illnesses attributed to it, and that's not right. They're all involved.
It may be time to get, if we could get some of the witnesses together, it may be time to just petition the Pentagon saying, look, y'all are already looking for UFOs. We know this particular case, there was some type of craft land here. We know it wasn't ours. We know it wasn't the Russians because you didn't blow nobody up. Why don't we go ahead and talk about this? I mean, they don't have to admit, like I said, they don't have to admit to anything wrong. They can just say, yeah, some kind of event happened on these 4 nights. And it could be an open discussion and get their documentation. Because I guarantee you, the freaking airports has got something hidden somewhere, locked away in a deep vault in some bullshit place. They're like us. They don't throw anything away. And I've been to, when I was in the Navy, I've been to one storage warehouse, which was Navy stuff that was either dangerous or stuff we weren't using or stuff that was out of date or whatever it was. This thing was probably 1.5 miles long, 5 stories tall, and about at least 2 miles wide. And it was full of boxes with only numbers on it. Mm-hmm. This wasn't a storage. This wasn't a depot for weapons. This was just a storage depot. It was for the Navy and I think the CIA stored stuff in there. No God knows what's in there. The damn freaking Ark might be in there. No telling what's in that place.
The best evidence is spirited away, and these best cases, there's often a lot of disinformation put out, and I think there's been a lot of disinformation.
There has been.
And I think there has been several agendas, some singular, some multiple. There's definitely government agendas, because that's all it doesn't make sense that all this stuff doesn't make the press, that the press aren't interested. They're more willing to put out a negative story than deal with somebody who's got some genuinely new stuff. It's like anything we can do to put the case down and trivialize it. And they still talk, and every documentary ever made over the last 40 years has talked about a lighthouse, which was ridiculous. And it was ridiculous from day one.
Yeah, it was
in a police murder.
The whole time it was ridiculous.
It would have been kicked out on the first day.
Yeah, they debunked that no time at all.
The media have got an agenda. The media, you might agree with me on this, Joe, but having worked on many documentaries over the years, the TV makes entertainment. It does not necessarily give you all the information. They've got an agenda to work through their program and what it's going to finish out like. And so they're giving you some of the information. They don't give you all of it. They don't necessarily lie. They just do it by omission. They just give you bits that they want in their program. And they really don't want to affect the status quo. No. Unfortunately, we should be challenged.
I think right now, if we can get, if between this and cable can get enough press, because there's such a hot environment right now for UFOs and yaps and stuff in the country, maybe you might be able to get something pushed out. Peniston and Burroughs, I think, were just either paid off or idled, one or the other. I just, somewhere along the line, they were just either threatened or given money to go along whatever freaking plan that was going along, because they go too far away from the norm of everybody else sometimes. So there's something else going on there. But the rest of the witnesses, I mean, if I would think if some of the major news medias like NBC, ABC, CBS, even Fox would just pick it up and run a story on it, I think it might get a lot more traction. If we can get enough traction, we can get some information.
Somebody with a big coverage like the Tucker Carlson, CNN, or something like that, to pick it and run with it, because that's the only way you're going to open this up to a wider audience. And it should be a world case that you should be talking about, and this should be headline news, because the information that these people are giving me, there's no reason to think that these are lying, and often it's corroborated testimony. And why isn't their voice as good as anybody else's? It's already.
Well, I tell you what, the way that the other medias are getting trounced by Fox, I would think they'd want to latch on to something like this. I mean, the Pentagon said this. We had a Harvard professor and the Pentagon coming out and talking about aliens now. We've got military talking about aliens now. So our country is taking a different turn.
Absolutely. absolutely. No,
And
you're
it's time for
right.
this kind of stuff to come out. Well, I've always said though the biggest problem with all of this is who's going to take the blame. So our problem in our country, the biggest problem we've got is we've been keeping so many secrets for so long. When it starts coming out, people are going to want to start pointing fingers and blaming people. Well, what's going to happen is, and I hate saying this, there's going to have to be amnesty for the government, or if not, we're going to never get the truth.
About 10 years ago, that the best way to deal with the American cover-up, and Americans have been largely responsible for it.
Yeah, that's true.
They dominated the subject, is truth and reconciliation. If you think about apartheid and how that stopped, and how they dealt with it, is they basically got people who were involved in the apartheid process to give testimony. Some of them went to prison. Now, I don't suggest that you do that, but you have a similar process of, yeah, you did this for the government, you worked on that project, you denied that. Just give your testimony, and we'll just say, okay, thanks very much.
And go on your way. Yeah, because that's the only way we're going to get the truth, because nobody's going to ever take the fall. So if we want the truth, then we got to say, okay, look, we're willing to forgive.
We want is the truth.
Yeah, we're willing to forgive and give us the truth. And if you don't give us the truth, you may find yourself in some deep, dark hole somewhere. But if you give us the truth, look, we don't have no problems. Go on about your life. It's not a problem you're going to have to worry about anymore. It's the only way it's going to work, because there's too many people that are too mad at the government that if the government came out tomorrow and said, guess what? Yeah, we know about aliens. Everybody and their mama is going to want to sue the government. So it's not going to happen. They
I don't think just that only, Joe. There's some pretty heinous things that the government has done to keep the alien thing secret. There's some things they've done allegedly with the alien communities that we're dealing with that are so heinous that if we don't give them amnesty, the stuff that they did to maintain the secrets and to get this technology we've accrued, we would all want to, as American citizens, by the Constitution, disassemble our government from the bottom and start all over again. We have that ability in our Constitution, and the stuff that they did for this, not just Rendlesham, but all of the UFO stories, it could really, really make people mad. I mean, it's going
to make a lot of people mad. And when the Brits find out they were used as a control group, because one of the things we learned early on when we started doing the research with people saying they've had contact is the contacts in Europe and the contacts in America are pretty much the same. The contacts in England, or I should say in Britain, are what we call 101 old school abductions, which don't seem to happen anywhere but there anymore. So it's like they're using the whole little island as a freaking control group against what else is going on. It's a strange thing, but it's not something we're going to get into tonight. I don't want to think about my friends in England getting probed. Yeah, what do you mean? You can look. Don't correct me. We'll call it Britain. We'll call it England. We'll call it the UK. We'll call it whatever you want. The Commonwealth. No, they're the leaders of the Commonwealth. They're not the Commonwealth. I guess they are the Commonwealth, but they're the guys who run the Commonwealth. Let's not get confused now, man. We're not even. What do you mean? No, we're not getting into wars like that. No, real quick on that question, Christopher. Okay, let me explain something. Whether the United States and Britain gets mad at each other, hates each other, whatever, our finances, our freedoms, and our money and our military is so tied together, you could not pull them apart without doing severe damage to both countries. It's just not something. People say, oh, well, China's got more ships than America. That's true. But Britain's got ships. Philippines got ships. Japan's got ships. It's not quite what people want to always make it out to be. It's not just us. It's a world thing. And
you cannot attack the United States without attacking England. Even if there isn't a physical attack in England, if someone physically attacks America, England's jumping in right away.
It don't matter. Anybody attacks either country, there's going to be a war.
Either way.
Nobody's putting up with that shit. We're still part of the Commonwealth. We just don't tell y'all. That's all. We're not Canada. Who said that? Man, I will send your ass to Canada just saying that.
Half of our television entertainment have been stolen off of British television.
Let's not look. I'm already mad about BBC. England, so don't give me on the BBC's ass tonight. They're on my list right now. With this, I gotta wait 3 years for a Doctor Who episode. Oh my God, man. They made me so mad with that crap. Denise, no. I'll get just a minute because we're getting ready to clear out. I'll get Gary to tell you where you can find the book. And read it because it'll probably be about a month, maybe a month and a half, because I don't know when I'm gonna get back. Because the next 3 weeks I'm just prepping to go to LA. I gotta listen to Mission Earth, the entire thing, and then I got to read the anthology for the interviews, and then when I get through with that, I'll probably have his book with me, hopefully, and I'll read that while I'm there at night, chilling out. And then, believe it or not, people's stats and shit like that chill me out. I would prefer to go through a schematic than a good novel. I can't help myself. It's
a lot of people, not me, but other people who are reading the book are saying it reads like a thriller.
No, that's cool.
The story, and it hooks you, and it drives itself, and people are pretty much hooked.
Well, no, John, we want y'all to get out and read it. And that way, you know, whenever it is in May, when we bring Gary back, a couple of have read the book, we can get a little bit more detailed into it. And by then, we got to remember, guys, we can only give so much information because we want you to go get the book. So at a point, we have to stop. And Gary's good. He did a lot of points, and there's a lot of interesting stuff he talked about tonight. And y'all going to go hear it. You're going to get to read it in its entirety. So he did really good on teasing y'all. Get out, get it, read it. Let me know what y'all think. Like I said, I'm going to be traveling a lot in the next few weeks, but and I'm going to be with all these geek bookers. That I'll have to tell them about your book while I'm out there, because it's all we're going to be talking about books for 10 days or 9 days. So it'll be just like book this, book that, book this. By the time I'm done, I'll have to kill myself with a book. But no, just kidding. I actually love going. One more question. All right, 2 more questions, and we're out of here. Wait, what? How much did the British government get involved in this? Is what I guess was the question.
They basically deny everything. Basically,
that's what I thought.
Once the memo was submitted to a guy called Squadron Leader Morland, he then passed it through the official RAF chains up to the Ministry of Defence. Within days, the Ministry of Defence assessed the case as saying there's nothing of defence significance, and that's literally the position that they've taken for the last 14
years. Yeah, because even though it was their base, they don't really care. It's Americans' headache.
Wasn't there a British admiral? Wasn't there a British admiral?
Yeah.
I mean, he said very similar words to what you just said. That it was
Lord Hill Norton, Admiral.
Yes.
He sadly passed away quite a while ago, but he was a very big advocate for the Rendlesham case. And he basically said, look, there are only 2 solutions to this. Either they're all lying, and that's a major defence significance, and they're all crazy, or it happened as they say it happened. Which again,
in either case, it's of definite significance, yeah.
So the MOD's stance has always been ludicrous, but that is the official statement. I've written to the MOD in the past, and I've been given that from the Ministry of Defence personally, that there's nothing changed in that 40 years. Well, I'm yet to go to them as a result of the book coming out, and one of the things that I plan to do is to start taking, now the book is out, and taking this new evidence, taking it to Parliament. I'll see my MP. I will then take it to ministerial level, and this time I'm going to give them copies of the book so they can't say that they've not got it, and ask real questions and say, how can all of these people be lying? There's clearly something, 17 different incidents over consecutive days. How can you say that this is of no defence significance when it's the top strike base, a top strike tactical nuclear weapon storage area that's involved? How can you maintain this position? It's ludicrous. It always has been ludicrous, but nobody puts pressure on because the UFO subject is a bit quirky and people don't like to rock.
Yeah, because they think it makes them look bad.
And in light of the recent developments in America and the attitudes that have changed in the UK, the attitudes haven't changed at all. They're totally out of step, surprisingly, or at least on the surface. I think they're totally out of step publicly with the American position and the legislation that's been passed in recent years. So this needs to be shown up for what it is. But I ultimately concluded in the conclusions of the book that 17 different incidents, multiple different types of UFOs, entities seen on at least 2 occasions, and basically you've got a whole host of things that's been covered up, and it's ridiculous, always has been, to say that it was of no defence significance. Ludicrous.
What's that, Mary Casey? I have no idea why Nick Pope doesn't talk about this. I really don't.
He would have been in the office, wouldn't he?
Look, I'm not here to slag off Nick Pope, but I'm here to tell the facts. And the facts are that at the time he went to the UFO desk in 1991, he was 24 years old. Does 24 years old? How many people realize that? Do you think that a 24-year-old runs a department?
No, he doesn't. He's not running no department, and he's not going to get anything good.
And by his own, I quote several letters from people who worked in his role after his departure, and also a letter that he wrote himself, because he was there for between the ages of 24 and 26. He was a junior desk officer. And in one of the letters that's reprinted in the book, because I'm only concentrating on the facts, I'm just letting the facts do the talking here.
Yeah.
He actually says, when he's asked about what his role was in UFOs, he said, well, I was only paid for my UFO role 20% of my wages, which means basically on a 40-hour working week, if we just use round numbers, that means 1 day a week, 8 hours. He was basically answering correspondence. People were writing in. Yes, he dealt with about 300 reports a year, but 90% of these reports were purely poorly written, scribbled, poorly completed sighting report forms. It was a simple pro forma that operated for over 50 years, and he basically never left the office. He was not an investigator. He was not a trained investigator. And it's not me saying this, it's all the people.
Oh, I know. I asked him one day.
And he vastly overplayed his role to the media, who were and to the UFO community that embraced him into the United States. But to the media, I've got him quoted. I've gone on to documentaries where he's saying, I ran the UFO project.
Oh, yeah, and I've heard that several times.
And that's not me saying it. That's him.
Oh, no, I've heard him say that. I've heard him say I was the boss.
Even on his website now, he still says I ran the UFO department. Well, he did. 24 years old. Nobody runs the department at 24. And he worked on it 8 hours a week, doing largely correspondence, made the odd few phone calls when it was a pilot case or a police case, and that's it. And he allowed the media to think that he was this big honcho, and I couldn't have done that.
Oh, yeah. The first interview I did with him, I got the impression he was like 35, 40, had a team working with him.
Guess what? Let me give you another piece, just as we come into the end, but this is pretty interesting. I'd seen him interviewed on various things where he said his father had got him interested in joining the MOD, which is true. But his father turns out to be not just any father. It turns out in a little interview, if you go on Wikipedia, there's a little interview there, a reference to a video. And I just came across it and I watched it. It was from about 2011. And he basically gets asked the question about his dad. And it turns out his dad was the top scientist in the entire Ministry of Defense.
Oh,
not
shit.
Just a scientist.
Well, that's why he got the fluff job.
And his father was the top scientist, second only to the Ministry of Defense, who had to be a politician. So he was the top guy. And I would think that top guy could open some doors for him. Yeah,
that's why he got the job he got. Matter of fact, he might have put his kid there deliberately in case something good came across. He'd be first one to see it.
I hypothesize that
I didn't know that changes everything.
That based on everything, that he has done very well for himself. Good luck to him. Well done. However, the facts are that he overplayed his role. He didn't run any department. Far from it. He was not a trained investigator, and literally he was not the person he claimed that he was, and indeed he wasn't. He's become world famous. Good luck to him, but it was on a misnomer.
That's because nobody's challenging, and I didn't know this part. So next time I'm gonna challenge him. You know how I am.
I think you'll like the chapter in the book then, 26 pages.
Yeah. So I'll oh yeah, because what I'll do is I'll read the book and then I'll just call him up one day and say, hey,
Nick, sent you the PDF proof anyway.
Wait, what?
I've sent you the PDF proof of the book.
Did you? I didn't see it.
Yeah, several weeks ago. But that
oh shit! Well, no, I didn't. Oh wait. Where'd you send it? Wait, where'd you send it? Did you send it to Messenger or my email?
Yeah, it's a Messenger.
Oh, that's why I didn't see it. Okay.
I
don't remember seeing it.
I you go back to your stream.
No, I believe you. It's not that I don't believe you. I just didn't see it. I just, for some reason, I missed it on Messenger.
I know you're a busy guy, but yeah, I sent it to you.
So. Oh, no, I'm going to go download it as soon as we get through talking.
Don't worry, Joe. I lost a PDF book for mine and Jeff's show that Jeff sent on Messenger too, and I never saw the the
No,
notification
it
come
happens,
over.
and we're all busy people, so it's
Right.
I
Yeah.
No,
understand.
yeah, but and I get sometimes I get my brain if I'm talking like in three messages at one time, my brain goes off on it. Oh yeah, there it is, right there. Look at that.
I kind of speculate, just in summing up on Nick Pope, that if somebody had wanted to control the narrative, he has been linked to all the major books for the last 25 years.
Oh, look
George
at
River
that.
Brunei, Jim and John's book, all the major
I don't
documentaries.
trust Nick as far as I can pick his skinny ass up and throw it.
Mhm.
And I ain't even gonna
I'm
lie
not
to you
talking
about it.
about that. I just want to talk about the facts.
But
But the facts
uh,
are that you can make a reasonable argument to say that he has been there with others to control the narrative of Rendlesham Forest.
oh, I'm
And
gonna agree
he's
now.
done
See,
a very good job of it.
yeah, I didn't know any. I'd have challenged him on this a long time if I knew this. So, like I said, I just downloaded the PDF. I'm gonna read this and then I'm gonna go through it. I just got to put it on my schedule so I don't forget. So I'm gonna invite him sometime in May or June to come on the show. I say, hey, Nick, how you been? He talked to you in a long time, and I said, hey, why don't you tell me about your daddy? I said, dude, did your dad put you there so that you could hand pick cases and send them to him? And I said, how old were you? Like 24? I said, dude, what the hell did you do at 24? I said, I remember when I was 24. I said, yeah, I had BS in science, but I mean, that's that I didn't know anything. Dumbass.
At
That's as
24,
politely
I
as I
was a
can say it.
lifeguard in a pool.
No, Jesus. Well, I've been out of the military about 2 years by then, but 3 years or something. But oh man, you done started a war. Didn't even know it, Gary. Damn.
Well, I mean, I've
No,
always
telling you
enjoyed
the
Nick
fact.
Pope's interviews, but I've always thought that he was kind of, not 100% on the cuff. And he kind of, like that guy Lou Elizondo that just came out on a couple of years ago about the A-tip stuff. It seems like they both of them kind of made themselves bigger than they really are, and now we know, some solid fact on that. So,
now, yeah. Now, well, I'm gonna sit down. And I'm gonna read Gary's book, and then I'll have a good go through it again. I'll probably do it twice because stuff like that I will. And then I'm just gonna sit down and say, hey, look, I might even write to him and say, hey, I want to talk to you about some of your stuff when you were in the department. And I'd like to talk to you about your dad because I hear he was in science. And because it's funny, I brought I was gonna say Travis Walton. I brought on oh God, now his name went out of my head. Like the oldest ufologist that ever existed, he passed Stanton Friedman. I brought him on. Yeah, I brought him on one night, and he thought we were going to talk UFOs. I said, "No, Stan, I want to hear about your physics career and the nuclear stuff you worked." We talked. He was so thrilled. He was just, oh my God, really? We spent 2 hours. We probably bored the audience right off the network, but we got in some serious. We geeked out for 2 hours. So I said, I'll just set him up for that, and as we're geeking out, I'll just drop the bomb on his head, and or I'll just bring it in as a guest question and say, hey, one of the guests wanted to know this. Is this true? And they had heard this was true. I said, I'm just passing the question on. You probably won't never speak to me again. Oh, sorry, I'll behave. Anyway, guys, I don't want to get Gary trouble. Gary's a great investigator. Y'all need to check the book out yourselves. I haven't read it yet, but I can already tell you I'm going to enjoy it. There's just oodles of stuff he said because excuse me, I'm somewhat familiar with the Rendlesham case. Well, I don't want to say I'm an expert because I'm not. I know a lot about it. I've done a lot of studying on it, and I've been taught by several people in the field. But expert, I would not say I am on Rendlesham.
Highly familiar with is a great term. I think how I feel about the case.
But we want to help bring this case into the light in the U.S. because really and truly, see, Americans, y'all forget something. I know we got to go, but y'all forget something. This case is really about us. Even though it happened in England, it's still about us.
On our base, on our watch, we were paying for it. So,
yeah. What was that, Gary?
Yeah. Well, it's largely an American case.
It is.
And the biggest thing is, for me, is the people who got caught up in these incredible events. We're not quite sure what they were, but they're certainly non-human, and that's why I call it non-human, because there's some kind of intelligence involved, and it's non-human. I think it's likely to be extraterrestrial, but ultimately I don't know. But it's certainly not a lighthouse. It's certainly not a weapon.
Yeah, it's definitely not a
test or a psychological test of the airmen. Not with people with live rounds. So I'm sorry. Too many incidents, too many varied places where it all happened. But the case, I'm kind of one to fight for the people who are involved, the people you're not aware of that I'm aware of, who should have a voice, who've been traumatized Many of them were sworn to secrecy, interrogated harshly, given injections, threatened with their life, and that is by their own military, and that is fundamentally wrong. And they deserve to have a voice and have a wider discussion.
They definitely do.
Is the American men and women who were involved in this case, and there's so much more to come if we can only get the level of it raised in the public.
Well, I think with this and the new movie, it's going to help out. Oh, where can they find you at? Because we got to get out of here in like 2 minutes.
My book is available on Amazon. That's the only place you can get it, so download it off Amazon.
Yeah, go get it off Amazon.
24 hours generally.
Just go to Amazon and get it. Yeah, y'all can get it.
Yeah, just go to Amazon in whichever country you're in, and it's there. I've had a lot of sales in the US already.
I think it's going to do good in the U.S., and I think this is a way to help. I think it's a way to just help get more press involved in this, and I would think someone like Nick would want to jump on this and kind of help this.
I know for a fact that he's been asked about it, and all he said was he was involved. Well, he says in the book, and it's there, that he thought I should be arrested or disciplined because I'm involved in a fraudulent documentary. The question is, why would I do that? I'm not going to destroy.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have a field day with this guy.
There's many quotes that he's been on social media slandering me, basically, but that's down to him. But he's never spoken to me, and we were friends of sorts for many years. But it's all to do with the Larry Warren saga, and he was heavily involved with the trolls, as was Colonel Holt, which is the seedy side. But I've got the evidence to support all that, but it's not in the book. The troll's not in the book. I've just put out the facts. But the key thing is that if you want an overview of the whole case, the only way you're going to see it is through this book, because I look at everything over 42 years and I pull out the bits that I think you want to know about. That a lot of stuff I didn't know about, and I thought I knew the case well. But I'm going to say to you, Joe, you're in for a surprise because of the amount of new and old stuff.
Well, I know just from what you said already. I mean, I'm surprised. Shit, you said 3 things a night. It got me intrigued. And the Nick Pope thing we already knew, guys. But no, he said a lot of stuff besides that got me well intrigued. Well, I didn't know about the woman. So I said, that just right off the bat, that was like, wait, what? Who the hell is this? And there's a couple other things you said. Before. Well, no, guys, like I said, we're going to read it. We're going to bring it back. Y'all can go get it. Go to Amazon and get the book. That way you can, we do like a little book club one night and we'll all get in here and read and talk. And that way you can get your questions in.
Absolutely happy to answer anything.
Mish, yes, I've been spoiling for a fight with ufology for a while. I've been quiet. I've been good. I haven't actually been behaving myself for like a decade. I can't help it. I can only go for so long before getting in trouble. That's why they hate me, because I'm always right. No, I'm not always right. I'm right a lot though. I'm not always right by any means. But they're mostly wrong, so I like to fight with them about it. Because I look at it like this: any ufologist is worth his salt would stand up to me and want to prove their point. And if they're not willing to, that just tells me they're full of you know what. Yeah. Yes, because I can be hard in it.
If somebody can't look you in the eye and hold that, and when you're asked a direct question, then there's some
problems. Oh, Denise, that's probably a good chunk of them. Well, in the old days, when I first got to the field, I was nice because I was sucking up and I was trying to get to know people and I was building a radio show. Now I got a really popular radio show with lots of people and lots of listeners and big network that's on television and shit. I don't have to be nice anymore. And, you know, no, it's not that. It's not that I want to be deliberately mean. It's just I got out.
You've established yourself. You don't have to stick up to anybody now. Yeah. You can say what you think is necessary.
And I do. And it's not that I didn't challenge people in the past. It's just I tried to do it more diplomatic. Now I'm like, look, you know, I do a lot of friendly interviews, stuff that I'm interested in, stuff that I like. But lately I've been hearing more and more and more garbage in the field. And I can only take so much garbage before I have to say something. I feel compelled sometimes that I have to go say something because I can't just keep. And I noticed before, look, I almost brought MUFON, almost put MUFON out of existence. The only reason they still exist is a good friend of mine, DeAndrew, who had cancer at the time, asked me not to extinguish them out of existence. I mean, I did. I even had most of ufology turned against them. And I said, okay, if you think they're worth keeping, because I was friends with Walt Anders. So I said, if you think they're worth keeping, I'll just leave it alone. Because, man, they've been infiltrated so bad. We had John Slusha. He was Black Ops. He worked all kind of Black Ops projects. He didn't work for the government. He worked for the companies as Black Ops. The other two, both of them were Black Ops. One was a translator for the government. The other one worked inside the circle. And I don't know who the last this new guy is. I haven't even talked to him. And by saying that, I don't want y'all to think there's not good people there, because there are a lot of good people in MUFON. There's just poor leadership. That's all I can tell you. But there are a lot of good people there. And I will tell you this: if you're going to give them an experience, be sure you make them sign an agreement that they can't write a book about your experience without your permission. If I had $1 for everybody who told me they gave them a thing and they wrote a book, I could retire. No, I'm not anti-MUFON. I just want you to know what you're dealing with and who you're dealing with. Come on, for 20 years, they wouldn't even talk about abductions. If it wouldn't be for me, they still wouldn't be talking about them. I forced them into the issue. Oh, yeah. I forced Priola Harris into the issue, Richard Dolan into the issue. I was like, look, there's something going on, and y'all just not going to forget it. I'm not going to let it slide. And it's the same thing with Rendlesham. Sometimes you can't let stuff slide. You got to stand up for it. And this is a case, it's time for its attention. You know, we had MUFON, we had Betty and Barney Hill, we had Ketzberg. This case is actually better than all of those, and it's time to put it out.
Much more complicated.
It is.
Much more incidents, more people involved. Still a lot of things that we don't know, but what we do know is it's the most important case, arguably ever. If you think of Roswell, which is a seminal case because of what it was, in simple terms, it was an alleged UFO crash and retrieval, and then a government cover-up. Well, by comparison, that's a simple solution or a description of the Roswell case. But Rendlesham is multi-layered.
It's multi-layered.
Because it has the potential to be a game changer, to make, if the real facts were portrayed on the media as it should be over the years, then people would a long time ago would realize that some UFOs are almost certainly ET.
Almost certainly are. Kevin, when it comes to Rendlesham, I would think most of them were probably some type of probe, but when Gary was describing one of the other craft, that sounds like there could have been an individual in it or something. I don't want to say human in it because I don't know what the hell it was.
Well,
but
let me just give you an aside. When I interviewed Sergeant Adrian Bustinza on the Holt night, the third night, he has an experience with John Burroughs. John Burroughs is clearly involved in the first night, and he has 2 nights later, he is clearly involved in another incident with Adrian Bustinza. But what's interesting is that in the interview that Adrian Bustinza gave to me, he says that he goes out after Holt's team came back, and he goes out with John Burroughs. They're not in the field, they're on a pathway close to it, and then he says Bustinza feels like he is pushed from behind, and he falls to the ground. And as he falls to the ground, John is ahead of him several meters. John is then suddenly engulfed in a bright white light. And he says that during that experience, he can see an outline of a figure to the left of John and an outline of a figure to the right of John, with John in the middle and blasted by light. So there was some kind of entity involved in that. And he describes it very, very well. And and so there's clearly entity, and there was just tagging on to the end of that, it's all in the book, but suffice to say that they thought they'd gone out for 10 minutes. When they got back, Holt was angry with them, says, "You've been gone for 40 minutes. Instant missing time."
Yeah, instant time. I wish I tried to get all of them to let me hypnotize. I said, just look, guys. I said, you can bring whoever you want with us. Just let's find out what you don't remember. I said, obviously, everybody involved in this has memories that hasn't surfaced yet. I said, why don't we just get them out and let's talk about them. And if it turns out to be Mill Lab, that's fine. And I said, I don't think that's what it's going to be, though. I said, somewhere along the line, in one of these cases, there was some type of contact. We just needed to find out what it was and who it was. And but anyway, I know we got to get out of here. What is it, like 6 a.m. your time, man?
7 minutes past 5. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, the man is a beast, man. He is a beast.
1:07 here on the East Coast.
So you're all hot. But
it's 1 a.m. for Jay. It's like midnight for me. I'm just getting warmed up. Everybody.
So it really doesn't bother me, and I'm grateful that you give me the opportunity to speak.
Oh no, I love having you on, Gary. You're always a blast to hang out with. Ladies and gentlemen, wait, who? No, I don't think that's how you pronounce his last name. I don't think
Heseltine.
That's like I always mess up and call him Hazlitt, and it's time because there's a T in there. I always forget the T's in there. And I don't know where you got that from. Anyway, you're a retard. Excuse my language. I didn't mean to call you that. Anyway, guys and girls, we got to get out of here. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us. Everybody on the West Coast. I know it's only 10 o'clock for y'all, so it's kind of early. But for the rest of us, it's getting kind of late. Anybody with questions that didn't get answered tonight, you're free to send them over to my email, and I'll send them over to Gary, and he can answer. But I would just go get the book and answer the questions yourself by reading the book.
Sounds like something we all got to read.
Yeah, I'm definitely reading it because I want to have him back in a couple of weeks because I want to talk about it. Well, I got a lot of reading going on for the next 2 or 3 months. I got a lot of stuff going on, and then I'm going up to. They're doing a documentary on me actually at the Buffalo College in New York, so that ought to be interesting.
Well
done. And so we'll see how that goes. And I don't know, people. We'll find out how it goes. I've had other stuff done on me. Some stuff I release, and sometimes stuff they release, and some stuff doesn't make it out. Stuff. Look, people, when you do TV, you never know what's getting out. Just to put this in perspective, my first time ever on Ancient Aliens, we filmed for 6 hours. You know how long the segment was, guys? 3 minutes. 3 minutes. It was 3 minutes. The second time we filmed for a whole day, and it was 7 minutes. Don't get me wrong. You can say a lot in 7 minutes, but still.
That's how Hollywood works. If they want 3 minutes of interview, they're going to drill you for 6 hours.
But I will tell you, they pay you.
And they're going to take this little piece and boom, there's your show.
I will tell you, if you ever get to go with them, Prometheus is usually who you're dealing with. They put you in a good hotel in DC. I stayed at the Mandarin. I could see Obama's bedroom from where I was staying. They actually put me in a suite, really nice place. And then I was at the Wyndham last time I was in LA. And then I forgot where it was in New York, but they were all nice hotels. When I was out in LA, they gave me my own personal, chauffeur people, take me around, show me the world and stuff like that. So they take good care of you. And they pay you good. Well, it depends. What do you mean, scale? Oh, no, I got more than scale. I wasn't going to LA for scale. Screw that.
Hey, what the hell? Scale's not that bad.
Scale's good right now. And that's not what I'm saying.
$50.
No, scale's not bad. I think it's $460. It's $480, something like that. But no, people, I got a little bit more. I'm worth a little bit more in scale, people. Give me a damn break here. And when they get premium information out of me, just like they did at Gary. But anyway, go get Gary's book, guys. He'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk with us. Don't forget, Cable Green will be out in September. Y'all can check it out. A lot of good stuff in all of this. I personally think this book is going to help. I really think this is going to me, this is the send-off for Cable. Matter of fact, I'm going to write my boy, whoever wrote me the other day, and tell him I think this is going to be the kickoff. I really think this will help them get a better kickoff. This will bring interest into this movie that just hasn't been there before. I think that's how it's going to be. But go out, get the book. Let me know what y'all think, guys. Write to me and tell me how you think about it. Let me know what y'all think about Gary. He's been on with us many, many, many times over the years. And he got to do a crazy show with me and the girls one night. Poor man had to tolerate all that crap. Them girls are bad. Y'all don't know. Them girls are bad. They are bad. On that note, good night. Stay tuned for Spaced Out Radio. I think they got an hour left, so y'all can check out Scott and what kind of trouble he's up to tonight. And on that note, I will see y'all on Wednesday.
Thank you.